music. Let me try that again. Damn it, I knew I forgot something. Here we go again. This is what happens when you go live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and finally we are into beer blather mood. And you know, this is gonna be a short intro. Waking up from the slumber induced by the anvil storm that befell them last November, leftards are giving it their all to differentiate themselves from mainstream America. Somehow, they seem to think that landing in DC with Palestinian flags, chanting pro-terrorist slogans will do the trick. Or perchance, calling for a boycott of Israel, burning Teslas on the streets, or embracing lawbreakers from Los Angeles to New York. The response is what one could have anticipated. From Eric Adams in New York to Fetterman in Pennsylvania, Democrats are checking out of the sinking ship. Duh! Let's watch them as they systematically make the wrong choice in the Great Bifurcation. Sane people to the right, suicidal maniacs to the left, full speed ahead. This is Solvent Bradley, the largest human repository of useless information from my golden cage in Florida. And right next to me, do I get this right? Yeah, that one over there is Thomas Victor, the only living expert in World War One flamethrowers and so many things, but none more than surviving the retards in California. Of course, from Californication. And this is Beer Blather 266, the Great Bifurcation. How are you doing, Thomas?
I'm good. You were talking about sane people leaving the sinking ship. We had the Iranian mullahs make a more rational decision than the people in this country who are supporting Hamas. The Iranian mullahs just cut off all their relations with the Houthis in Yemen. So the Houthis, the movement, the party, the armed forces were founded in 1994. The dictator of Yemen fought them all the way until he was overthrown in 2015, I believe. 2014?
Give or take, somewhere about there.
Then the new government took over, and the Yemenis overthrew that government, and it had to flee to Saudi Arabia. And then the Saudis began a war against the Houthis, and they had them pretty much on their knees until Biden took over in 2021. And Biden immediately cut off all aid to Saudi Arabia and took the Houthis off the terrorism list and allowed them to rearm and refund and everything. So Trump comes in and he launches an air campaign against the Houthis that has been going on now for a matter of what, 3 weeks?
Almost 3 weeks.
And in 3 weeks, the Iranians completely pull all their staff, their troops, their trainers, their instructors. They pull them all out of Yemen, and they say, "Who are the Houthis? Never heard of them."
Houthis too. We never helped the Houthis. We're not there. They're on their own.
Bye. So, in 3 weeks, Trump has done what two Yemeni leaders and the Saudis, and it wasn't their fault because Biden interfered and pulled.
Biden threatened to turn Saudi into a pariah state. Remember?
Yeah. Well, he promised to do that. He said he was going to do that, and you know the Saudis are long-term thinkers, so they just said, okay, whatever you want, boss, and they just waited till Trump came back. But the Saudis are now back waging war against the Houthis. I've seen gun camera film. Trump released a video of Houthi leadership gathering to plot out their next move, and he had a 2,000-pound bomb dropped right in the middle of them. And if you look carefully on the right side of the screen, you can see the shadow of the munition coming in, and it's easily twice the length of anybody standing there. So it's a gigantic munition. It may actually have been bigger than a 2,000-pound bomb because it left this perfect lunar crater in the ground. But the mullahs are showing more sanity than American leftists. So this country is...
I'm out of here. The mullahs are showing as much sanity as Eric Adams.
Well, exactly. And the Great Bifurcation in this country, my brother and I always used to talk about this, and we thought initially that the country would bifurcate into the educated and uneducated. Then we thought it would bifurcate into left and right, and now we realize it's bifurcating into sane and insane, because the people on the left who were burning Tesla dealerships, and now a Tesla driver was a pregnant woman was very severely injured when somebody threw a rock through the window of her Tesla as she was driving.
Yeah.
And the attacks on Tesla drivers is one of the most inexplicably deranged things, because Tesla owners are almost, for the most part, universally leftists. So they're attacking fellow leftists. And what are they trying to accomplish? These people have already bought their Tesla.
Yeah. Fellow leftists who bought their Teslas following the save the world narrative of leftardism. And they spent more money than they had in order to save the planet long before Musk was an issue.
Exactly. And they already own these. So you're not accomplishing anything. Number one, you're creating new Trump supporters out of what used to be leftists. And number two, you're not harming Elon Musk in the slightest, because he already made his money off those Teslas.
No, you know who you are harming?
Leftism.
Every fucking schmuck in this country has to buy car insurance. Because insurance companies are paying damages through the nose.
Sure.
And guess who's going to pay for that? You, me, everybody with four wheels. That's what they always do.
Yeah. But see, these are people who are incapable of critical thought. I've now seen 3 videos, man on the street interviews. All 3 videos were a conservative, 2 were conservative men and 1 was a conservative woman. They were interviewing 3 different leftist women, and just in 2 cases they were talking about abortion, and in the 3rd case they were talking about Elon Musk. And they were having a conversation. The leftist, that person's voice was much louder than the other person. And without warning, those 3 leftists started punching the conservative who is interviewing them in the middle of their sentences. There was no... You've seen street confrontations before. The men get nose to nose. You're a bitch. You're a bitch. You know, no, I'm not. Prove it. Prove it. You're right.
Push there.
No, in this case, you had people having a conversation who just suddenly launched into fisticuffs without any warning whatsoever. And in one case, the woman was there with what appeared to be about an 8 or 9-year-old daughter. And these were well-dressed people. These were people of means. These are people with incomes. And they're off their rockers. They've lost their minds. Their response... These are people who I'm absolutely positive have never in their life resorted to violence. And my brother Tim has concluded that insanity is catching. Insanity is an infectious disease, and like all diseases, some of us are immune, and some of us aren't. And
Yes.
we are seeing leftists become infected with the virus of insane violence without any logical reason behind it.
Yep, I have to say I have natural immunity because I was infected in my youth, and I built antibodies. So I don't think I can get contagion, but a lot of people are. Not enough to make me worry about the future of the country, but
No,
enough to make me worry about their future.
well,
Well,
this is the
I don't really, fuck them.
these people are almost instantaneously identified by the internet,
Yep.
and they lose their jobs. In one case, a guy who vandalized a Tesla lost his business. Um, he was confronted, and he couldn't explain why he did it. He had nothing against Musk. He had nothing against the car. He had nothing against the driver. It's like, then why the hell did you do it, you weirdo? You caught the bug. You caught the leftist crazy bug, and you went and did something, and you can't even explain why. It's like the people who hate Trump and have a complete inability to explain why.
This is crazy. I'm trying to do this. I'm gonna put it without sound in the back, so you can comment on it.
I can't understand a word you're saying.
Oh, what is it? Have I turned into a foreigner?
No, all I heard was.
Holy crap! Anyway, I'm gonna put a video in the background
Okay.
without sound, so we continue the conversation, and you can comment on what you see. This is in DC in the mall today. Uh, they are claiming up to 100,000 people. It may have reached that at one point, but then again, you could have fit them all into the national stadium. Fuck them. This is to put together 100,000 people in this country is not something so impressive at all. Uh, any kind of third-rate preacher can get 100,000 people in the stadium. A rock band. Um, I think that Modi, when he came to America, he got 120,000 people in a stadium in Texas.
Mhm.
So it's not that many. So I'm not going to argue the point. If they want to say 100,000, fine. Much of what I saw during the day didn't get to 50. And you're going to see that there is plenty of empty space in between these morons. But we'll see. There you go. Uh, by the way, you see that lovely Palestinian flag in there?
Okay, see, a flag like that would cost you several $1,000s.
Mhm. How is this? And what the fuck does it have to do with protesting Trump policies in general?
Well, what are these people protesting? What are they protesting?
Sanity.
I mean, okay, they can go and they can protest, but what are they protesting? They're protesting Elon Musk. Elon Musk has no authority to do anything. So why are you protesting him? You don't want him to audit the government? Why not? Why don't you
No,
want him to audit
because
the
we lose our way of life if they audit the government and God
Okay,
forbid
but these
corruption.
protests are basically proof that the federal government is
Yes,
fueled by people who steal money and use it to fund crap like this. So these people are proving that, because if they essentially they're proving by their very existence that they don't want Musk to cut off their own funding. They're marching in support of theft and corruption. And, it's nice that they do that. It's an admission that I'm sure they don't know they're making. But, these sorts of things. I mean, it isn't the U.S. that's like blowing the hell out of Hamas. It's Israel. Do you think the Israelis are going to look at these protests and say, "Oh my God, we better stop bombing Hamas"? Jamie Raskin. Holy shit, Jamie! Get hair plugs or something. That's
the third biggest idiot in Congress. By the way, take a look at the geriatric crowd around him. I think most of them are people who were fired from the government, and they're very upset because they lost their collective bargaining agreement.
Well, there's like 200 people there.
Yeah, right there, nothing. And if the camera shows the stage, you're going to see there aren't that many around that. Anyway, this is what it looks from the ground. That's what I said. It looks like it occupies a large chunk of the mall, but when you look at it closer, they're a little bit sparse. In any case, their chants and all that jazz.
Hey, ho, ho! Elon Musk has got to go. Hey, ho,
Yeah.
ho!
And the people united will never be defeated, which is a pretty bad translation of something that rhymes in the original, but they can't come up with something, so they essentially translate the bullshit from South America.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
El pueblo unido jamás será vencido.
Right.
They've heard this shit in South America. What does it mean? Nothing. Because El Pueblo Unido has routinely been plastered against the walls.
What I'm asking is, if they're all united, what's stopping? Is Elon Musk stopping? No. Are the Israelis stopping? No. Is Trump stopping? No. So what are they even saying? They are being defeated. They're being defeated second by second and minute by minute and hour by hour.
These guys are so fucked, they cannot take a crap anymore. Their history, they're gone.
Get Jamie off the air. I don't want to look at him anymore.
Yeah, this is the last gurgle of a dying movement. They're done for.
Well, they're done for. Did you hear what happened in North Carolina with the election?
Oh.
I don't think so. A judge ordered that 65,000 voters, this was a race that the Democrats won by 700 votes, and a judge is ordering that 65,000 voters prove that they're eligible for voting. So this is almost certainly going to flip the race.
Oh, twat, 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 twat. And did you hear about Orange County?
No.
That's an interesting one, because a judge there found that there were about 100,000 invalid votes. And apparently, when we said that the Democrats stole 6 congressional seats in Orange County, they did.
Mm-hmm.
They did. And where it goes from here, I don't know. He hasn't ordered anybody to prove anything yet. But the fact is that it was proven in court that a shit ton of votes were from either illegal aliens or invalid votes, votes from people with false addresses on them, on the registration, for instance. So I'm sure that if you scratch the surface on elections in California, you're going to have massive fraud.
Of course. My brother has a friend who is a rabid Democrat, and he used to fight with my brother all the time about Trump. And my brother really likes the guy. He's a painter, and he couldn't, by his own admission, he couldn't defend his own views. So they finally agreed they weren't going to fight about it. This guy came from somewhere. He came from Missouri. And he came out here to California to become a Californian. Well, he had a massive stroke, and he's almost certainly never going to be 100% again. So his sister wants him to move to Missouri so she wants to buy a house and they'll live together. This is about a 65-year-old man, and his sister is 10 years younger, and she's a nurse. She's a registered nurse. So she wants him. He's almost certainly going to get to the point where he'll be able to walk. He'll be able to feed himself. He'll be able to do all of that. His speech doesn't appear to be impaired, but his thinking process is slightly impaired. So he's going to be right under the threshold for self-sufficiency. He doesn't want to go. He's a Californian now. He wants to stay in California. Because of his insurance, he went to a rehab center, and the sister said their website only shows the outside of the center, which is always a very, very bad sign. So he went to this place, and he's fallen 3 times. He's gotten 2 head injuries. The staff mocks him for wetting the bed. This is a stroke patient. When he complained about that, they emptied his urine jug, and they put it just enough out of reach that he had to get out of bed to get it. So he's being abused by the staff. His sister can't take any more time off of work. She took 6 weeks off of work and is now in a probationary period. And so, but he doesn't want to leave California. He's willing to put up with all this abuse, all the suffering, all everything, because he's a member of the cult of California. And it's an appalling sort of situation. And his sister told him, "You're not a California boy anymore. You have to come home to Missouri." He's got nothing here. He's got absolutely nothing. He didn't save a penny.
Well, but like many Californians, he's a sucker for abuse.
This is the thing. These people, especially, well, no, it's almost the whole state. The ones that have the most votes, they keep electing people who destroy their quality of life, and they are absolutely loyal to them, exactly like an abused spouse. I just watched a cop video, and the boyfriend was sitting there with blood running down his face, saying his girlfriend hadn't punched him. They had 30 eyewitnesses saying that she was doing closed fist punching on him. He's lying. He's saying she didn't touch me. She would never touch me. She's a wonderful person. So this was Florida, and in Florida, it's one of those states where if the cops determine that there's domestic abuse, they make an arrest regardless of what the victim wants. They make the arrest in the name of the state. And he's demanding they not arrest her because he can't be away from her with blood running down his face. That's the California voter. That's the voter that is voting to have everything taken away from themselves and then end up in a rehab center where the staff abuses you. It's shocking. I mean, I can't imagine the mindset, but it
is shocking. But at the same time, I'm sorry, fuck him.
Well, my brother is close friends with him, but he is the first to say he's getting what he voted for.
He's getting what he voted for, and he's getting what he wants. I mean,
exactly.
Right. The guy would rather stay at home being abused by a bunch of subhuman characters rather than be taken care of by his obviously lovely sister.
Exactly.
Loving his sister. And, if he wanted to go back to California after getting better, well, so be it. But the guy is an imbecile. And that is before the stroke.
Yeah, I mean, you see this over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Um, except for my brother Tim in Vegas, all my other siblings are leftists, and they can't argue.
That's why your beard is white. I know it.
Well, they can't argue their position, but they still want to argue.
Yeah.
And I've always refused because what's the point in having a discussion with someone who can't even defend their own positions?
No.
They have no factual knowledge on anything.
No. Joanne in the chat is saying, "I'm sorry for the man's sister."
Yeah,
She's right. I'm sorry for the sister, poor darling. She doesn't need the abuse from this moron, or to sacrifice her job, or to jeopardize her quality of life because the idiot wants to be abused.
well, this is the thing. And okay, she tried to become his she tried to get power of attorney over him. Do you know what the state, how they determine if somebody is capable of looking after themselves mentally? They ask him, what's the date, where do you live, and who's the president? Those are the three questions they ask.
Right.
And if you can answer all three, then you're perfectly fine to look.
Your corpus mentis.
Exactly. And
yeah,
this state is, I think, the most inhumane state in the union. It's like a fairy tale where the wealthy. Okay, Bill Maher had Jane Fonda on. He was interviewing her. I've never seen an interview with Jane Fonda talking politics. Jane Fonda is a raving idiot. She has no factual knowledge on any subject.
Anything.
She's 80 years old and she has no factual knowledge on any subject. And okay, you know that Bill Maher went to the White House and had he had a dinner with Trump and, let's see, it was Kid Rock and Dana White, who's that wrestling guy. And I don't know if there was a third person, I think, but he had a good time. And he was amazed that they didn't pick on him. And it's like, why would Trump invite you to the White House to pick on you? That's what you would do, Bill Maher. You would invite Trump to your house to pick on him. You would do that.
No. He's not that stupid. He's a coward.
Yeah, well, he is.
He is, and you can see in his interactions sometimes. He's a slithering, groveling, sniveling coward who fears that either his friends are going to close the door on him because he's now sucking up Trump, which is probably the fear he has. Because whatever they discuss in private, it's not going to do one thing or another for him, and he can come out and tell whatever story. But his fear is that little clique of retards that he surrounds himself with are going to poo-poo him and boycott him because he's now sold off to the Orange Man.
Like, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. You were.
I was going to say, I saw that Anna Kasparian is now becoming almost a co-host in multiple conservative shows. She was on with who's that blonde, the really pretty blonde who used to be on Fox, and she's got her own show now. She's really hard edged. She hosted one of the debates, and Trump and her really went head to head in 27 during the 2016 election season. God, what the hell's her name? Anyway, she had Anna Kasparian on, and they were making fun of Snow White or something, and it was like they were co-hosting the show. And so Anna Kasparian is making lots of contact with conservatives, and of course they discuss their views, but for mostly they're discussing how crazy the far left has become. And this is a sign. I mean, if someone like Anna Kasparian is no longer worried about her future or worried about being canceled, that shows you that leftism is losing its power dramatically.
Yeah, and as it should be. By the way, everybody in the chat is telling you, Megyn Kelly.
Megyn Kelly, that's exactly
Yeah.
right. Megyn Kelly.
Remember when Megyn Kelly asked a rather stupid question of Trump regarding his misogyny, and that led to a little bit of a spat between the
Yes.
two of them. And eventually she realized she'd been stupid and went over on her knees, hand in hand, and that was the end of it. But
Well, see,
it's you know she suffered from the same illness that many suffer when they get to be known through folks, and it's happened to all of them. That they think they're invincible, they think they're unbeatable, and they go and do stupid things. And when they lose their position in Fox, they become no one. Just as rapidly as the stars rose, being on Fox News prime time, it sinks into oblivion when they are no longer there. Did you notice that?
yeah, and okay, Megyn Kelly, I'm sure she's making a living. I'm sure Tucker Carlson is making a living, but Tucker is gradually receding into the background. He's he's been resorting to having weirdo guests on, like I'm really bad with names tonight, but
he's the new Roger Stone.
Yeah, well, he'll just have somebody on who is a crackpot and wants to talk about the JFK files, proving that there was, the CIA was behind it or whatever. And it sort of happens, and it gets talked about by a few people in podcasts for a day, and then Tucker disappears again for a little while. But okay, the interesting thing that's happened in this great bifurcation is that the right wing conservatives have begun influencing the culture the way leftists always had, and film that is didactically leftist, they're all bombing. I mean, the new Snow White movie, it was a triple, a 6-digit fiasco for Disney.
Snow Brown.
Well, this is the thing.
By the way, did you notice what Gal Gadot looks like as the evil stepmother?
Yeah.
How the hell can that glorious woman be envious of the beauty of Ziegler?
What Disney argued was that the fairest of them all means the most social justice wise. And at the time wasn't Snow White mopping floors? So where's the social justice in her being a floor mopper?
What social justice? What kind of crap? We're talking about the Green fucking brothers, who were incidentally honoring their family name when they wrote stories. They were pretty fucking green.
Well, I mean, the brothers Grimm stories as we know them, are completely different from the original form, where you had like little kids having their eyes plucked out and
I read those to my kids.
Yeah, my father had them read to him, and he had nightmares all throughout his childhood. But
I have all of the original stories at home. I don't have this Disney shit.
Well, I mean, okay, I'm not a Disney fan. I don't oppose Disney, and I'm not a Disney fan. Like if you're going to talk about cartoons, I'm a Warner Brothers guy, and Mickey Mouse.
Oh,
Yeah, Mickey Mouse
you're an
cartoon,
intelligent man. Of course, you're a Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck
and
and all of the good ones.
the weirdo Warner Brothers one-offs where they would do a cartoon about the future, your future modern house, and it
Yes.
had it shows like a little kid asking their parents a million questions, and then it has this automated mouth come out of the wall and yell "shut up" at the kid, that type of thing. And in the case of I mean, I never understood the allure of Mickey Mouse because he didn't do anything. Donald Duck
Yeah.
threw tantrums. Goofy. There was a period in the '60s.
Did you see there isn't a single family unit in any of the Disney
Oh,
cartoons?
exactly. The Donald Duck had what, 3 nephews and
The nephews and the rich uncle.
exactly.
Eh, all of them have uncles, nephews, weird shit. Never, ever, fucking ever will you see normal parents.
No, during the 1960s, there were Disney comics that were really. It had to be the '60s because, of course, all the artists were experimenting with drugs. But like they had one where Donald went to the bottom of the sea in a bathysphere, and he was eaten by a megalodon shark who swallowed him and then spit him out, and then he was swallowed by a giant clam that was fished out of the ocean, and he came out in the world's biggest pearl. And then as they were auctioning it off, they could hear him inside, and they broke open the pearl, and Donald was saved. There were, maybe about a year of interesting Disney cartoons, but I just didn't get. Or Minnie Mouse. What has Minnie Mouse done? Minnie Mouse has done nothing. And I've never been a.
You mean other than being manipulative?
Well, yeah. Mickey is whipped, and she's when he doesn't do what she wants, she gets very unpleasant. But okay,
domineering, manipulative Democrat.
the feature length movie Snow White. Not a fan of the original. That just doesn't do anything for me. Sleeping Beauty. What's the other one? Cinderella.
Yeah. I think I saw all of them once when I was a kid, and
Exactly.
I never had any interest to go back for more.
No.
And at home, I went a little further than you because I'm really bothered. I was bothered by Disney TV and the fact that not only is there no nuclear families or anything even remotely approaching normal relationships, they're damaging. The father, when there is a father, is always an idiot.
Yeah.
The kids are geniuses.
The kids are geniuses.
The mothers are evil.
Okay, didn't Disney do a 3 Little Pigs cartoon? Yeah, they did. And the Big Bad Wolf had 2 nephews, or maybe it was even 3 nephews. I don't know.
Yeah, but I don't even remember that.
He lived with his nephews. There were no parents there, and of course, he had no mate. Because I remember I had a record, and it showed the Big Bad Wolf singing a song about all the juicy meat cutlets that you could get from a pig, and I didn't understand what he was saying, so we used to sing that song phonetically. Then there was the soundtrack of a Mickey as Jack and the Beanstalk, and
I remember that.
That was one of the only times Mickey ever had any motivation, any agency.
I'll give you all of them. For one moment of Bugs Bunny popping up somewhere he's not supposed to be, and saying, "I knew I should have made a ride in Albuquerque."
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. The cartoon that opens and you see the tunnel being burrowed in the ground, and he pops up and he has no idea where he is. Also, Bugs Bunny used to sing um, songs that were popular in the 40s. So there was one where he ended up on an island where a female gorilla fell in love with him, and it opens with him in a little. He's sailing along in a rowboat in the middle of the ocean, and he's singing someone someone's rocking my dreamboat, and that's a real song. And he ends up with this gorilla falling in love with him, and of course all hell breaks loose. But the Warner Brothers cartoons were extremely imaginative, and Walt Disney, while he was alive, was a dictator. He was, everybody had to do exactly what Walt wanted, and Walt's sensibilities were not for me. You know, uh, uh, what was it? The Sorcerer's Apprentice. Mickey Mouse
Yep.
enchanted a broom, and then he chopped it.
Infantasia.
Oh, it's Fantasia. Okay.
He creates flawed and doesn't know how to stop it.
I've seen Fantasia, and I don't remember a damn thing about it except for the brooms carrying buckets of water. That's it. I don't remember anything. Were there hippopotamuses in ballerina outfits in Fantasia?
I blocked Disney in my home in 1994 so that my kids wouldn't grow up watching this shit.
The live action Disney TV shows all featured little tweeny girls as sex bots.
Yes. All of them grew up to be whores.
Yeah, Hannah Montana was a Disney character, and she grew up to be Miley Cyrus, and nothing more needs to be said about that.
All of them are drunk drug addict whores.
There was some Disney kid who became a singer. She sang her first big hit was Genius. Christina Aguilera. Christina Aguilera was a clean-cut Disney kid, and then she became a street whore for years, and then she crashed and burned. She gained
name anybody you want, Mexican, white trash, take your pick, daughter of some Hollywood producer. They all turned out the same.
Yeah, and that
Britney Spears is there over there. Same thing.
Yeah. No, I saw some Disney live action show. I can't remember. I was injured. I crapped out my back or something, and so I was at my parents' house. That's it. I was house sitting, and there was nothing to watch, and I was just flipping through, and so here's this Disney thing, and all these little girls are wearing belly shirts, and they've got lipstick on and eyeshadow and mascara, and I was thinking, these are 12-year-olds. What the hell is going on? And all their stories were about boys, and it was really amazing to me.
When you see 12-year-olds making out when their uncles are not home, it's like, give me a fucking break. It's poison.
Yeah,
it's poison. It is designed to destroy the minds of the young.
Well, see, this is what I've said, and I've never found people to agree with me. My theory is that the political left has been on a decades-long project to not only destroy the nuclear family, but to corrupt all our youth.
But that's how they start. If you had gone to school, revolutionary school in the 60s and 70s, capitalist society had to be dismantled from within. The destruction of the nuclear family was number one. Now, you and I think very much alike in terms of religion, is kind of like to each his own. But in terms of the revolutionary methodology of demoralization, all religion is bad. So religion is bad. The nuclear family is a form of oppression. The father figure is oppressive patriarchy. And everything, if you take a look at all of the Disney show productions, uh, since they really started doing it in the 2000s, they all aim at the same target.
Mm-hmm.
They all aim at the same target. The guy who goes to church on a Sunday is a son of a bitch. The father is an imbecile.
Before Miley Cyrus became Miley Cyrus, when she was still Hannah Montana, she and her father, Billy Ray Cyrus, appeared on the cover of The Atlantic. Is it The Atlantic? No, Vanity Fair. Vanity Fair.
Vanity Fair, yeah.
They were in bed
Kind
together.
of shit.
They were in bed together, and she was nude. He was lying on top of the covers wearing his jeans. She was under the covers sitting up with her elbows on her knees, but she was nude. She had nothing on. And it's like, okay, can you get more obvious? Can you get more obvious with the message you're trying to get across? And they were like, what message? It's like, okay, Stephen King wrote a novel called It about a space creature that takes the form of a killer clown. And in the novel, the only way that these 12-year-old children, it's something like, I think it's 4 males and 1 girl, the only way that they can break the spell of the evil clown is to have sex. So all 4, the 12-year-old girl pulls a train, and she has sex with all 4 of her friends and comments on the size of the fat boy's junk. And Stephen King, whenever anybody, the movie It, or the book It, has been made into, it was made into a mini series, and then it was made into a movie. And in both cases, they just omitted that scene. And Stephen King pretends absolute confusion as to why this scene was controversial. And it's like, Steve, you're not fooling anyone. You wrote that because you're into that kind of stuff. In terms of
because you're a pot-headed, depraved asshole.
Well, this is the thing, that to pretend that this would not be to pretend that feign total ignorance over the controversy of that scene shows you that he knows damn well that it's a controversial scene and that it's something that he thinks about a lot.
She's just being facetious.
The scene is written in very, very, very graphic detail, and it's like, Steve, buddy, you have no idea what you're revealing here. I mean, you know, but you see that I've seen, or I've heard passages read from novels that are available to children in school libraries. They're written for young children, and it's like, really? So again, it's hard not to conclude. It's impossible not to conclude that this is a concerted campaign to sexualize little kids, and
which is again part of the campaign to destroy the idea of nuclear family.
And it also it plays 2 parts. It does that, and it also makes the kids more malleable when it comes to the predations of adults.
Oh yes,
the child is already sexualized.
It normalizes.
It normalizes it. A sexualized child is not going to be as this child isn't going to fight off an adult the way a normal child would.
No, it's going to be more valuable. It's going to be more
Exactly.
viable.
And so it's a two-pronged attack on childhood, and I've always felt that. I've felt that for decades now, and
I even felt that you know, and some people understand what I say, but did you see those pageants for little girls?
oh, of course.
I find it disgusting.
Well, think about it. There was a little girl named Jean Benet Ramsey,
Yeah,
and
I was thinking of her. Yep.
the case has not died because people are titillated. That child was 6 years old when she was murdered. She wasn't a woman. She wasn't a sexualized being. She was a baby. She was a 6-year-old baby. And for anybody to feel anything except for horror and rage is sick. It's a sickness. The parents were sick. The
Very.
pageantry, the people who ran the pageantry were sick.
All of them are.
All of
There
them.
are there are every now and then, you know, when I'm looking for something new to see, and I'm wondering, you know, life was much better when I lived in New York and there were only three TV channels. And I could watch reruns of Star Trek or The Honeymooners. Right now, I have an offer of literally dozens of thousands of things, and I can never find anything interesting to watch. So I'm over there surfing the streaming channels, and I come across these things, fat ladies parading tiny little girls
Mhm.
dressed like French whores, and you know, and the one who directs the thing and all that jazz is a little fucking tyrant. And I say, what? How can anybody enjoy this? I would never do that to a daughter of mine.
Well,
I would
also,
probably punch anybody who tried.
think about a 6-year-old. A 6-year-old plays with Barbies. A 6-year-old has little. A 6-year-old invites her father to a tea party.
To a tea party.
Um,
How about making cakes?
exactly. Um, a 6-year-old is has basically only been speaking completely
For two
coherent
years?
for a year. You know, um, 6-year-olds are in what, first grade, maybe second grade. Um,
Depending on the month they were born, yeah, but generally first grade.
yeah. So think back if you can to when your own kids were that age. They were babies.
They were.
They were in absolute need of protection, like
Yes.
all the time. And
And innocent and totally innocent
innocent. They're innocent.
and totally trusty.
Yeah, that's another thing that leftists seem to have an urge to corrupt, to make people not trust anybody else, and to blame the victim. Leftists are back to victim blaming. It's you know, she shouldn't have been driving that car. If she hadn't been driving that car, she wouldn't have been attacked. Did you hear that there was a case? It was at a track meet, and it started raining, and people from one school gathered under their school tent, and a kid from another school went under that tent, and they told him he had to find his own tent. So he got all pissed off, and he pulled out a knife, and he stabbed to death a 17-year-old track star. The guy who died was white. The murderer is black, and all the black activists are coming out to support him. He committed a murder for no reason other than he felt disrespected, and the message is, if you disrespect someone, then you deserve to be murdered with a knife. And
Imagine that.
so they're shooting themselves in the foot again. And there's no question the cops say that when they arrested this guy, he said, this isn't alleged, I did it. And now they're of course going to argue self-defense, but unfortunately for the killer, there's a whole tent full of eyewitnesses.
Hmm.
But again, this is leftist. This is leftism for you. Murder is okay as long as the right person is murdered and the right person is doing the murdering.
Hmm. Ah, I'm checking the chats while we do, and there are people in Twitter saying that it's about time that our beer brothers talked about flamethrowers in Saudi Arabia. If I recall, we've been talking about Saudi on and off for 5 years.
Wait, what did they say it again? It's about time we started talking about flamethrowers.
Flamethrowers in Saudi Arabia. Talk about pigeonholing you. Uh, I have to make a comment because sometimes I'm bewildered. We have been talking about Saudi Arabia on and off for 5 years. Hardly a month goes by without some commentary. And flamethrowers only in context. Uh, but I have something for the people in Twitter who wants to hear some things in beer blather. I promise we will consider it if you support the program, baby, because we're not taking commissions. We talk about anything that comes to our minds, and we'll continue to do this. If you want to hear about something in particular and do it by commission, uh, feel free to make an offer and we'll consider it. Done.
Well,
I'm sick and tired of the freeloaders.
also, I mean, I could talk about flamethrowers all day, but that's me. I'm not going to impose my niche interest on other people. And as for Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia is okay. They're hosting. Um, Apparently, they're going to host. It's very confusing. The Iranians don't want direct talks with the United States, but they want indirect talks. And
Yeah,
so,
same as they did in Vienna
right.
2 years
And
ago.
so apparently this time around, it's going to be held in Saudi Arabia. The Saudis, when I used to write about Saudi Arabia, the Saudi Arabians had ramped up their armed forces to a degree never seen before in Saudi Arabia. But what's happening now in the Middle East is that everybody wants Israel to be the muscle of the Middle East.
Yep.
And that's not to say that the Saudis and the Emiratis and the Bahrainis and the Moroccans and the Algerians are going to disband their armed forces. But nobody has the technical skill and training as the Israelis do. Israel has a draft. All Israelis must serve. And okay, the Israelis have created a commando brigade. There's no other country on earth that has a commando brigade. A brigade is 2 regiments, or it could be a series of battalions. Traditionally, it was 2 regiments. It could be that they're doing the British way, and it's like 6 battalions or something. But no other country in the world has a commando brigade. So the Israelis have defeated Hamas. There's no doubt about that. They've defeated Hezbollah. Hezbollah, they're still talking, but they're not doing. Bashar al-Assad was overthrown. The current Syrian government has said it has no beef with Israel. And now the Houthis are being pounded into dust by the U.S. Navy. And Trump has moved multiple assets into the region because he wants the Iranians to come to the table and give up their nuclear weapons program,
or
and
will destroy them.
or will destroy them. And that's all there is to it. And the Iranians have seen what we've done to the Houthis. The Israelis know
I'm still trying to overcome the mirth caused by the Iranians saying the Houthis are their own people. We don't support the Houthis, and all our military personnel has to return.
yeah, yeah.
Hello.
That's called a
Pick,
self-defeating sentence.
yeah, it's like pick one, assholes. In the meantime, of course, the bottom line is they're dropping the Houthis like a red hot ember. Forget about the hot potato. They they started showing videos of bunkers where they store missiles and telling the world how they have thousands of missiles. Well, we've seen what Iranian missiles can do. Uh, Not too long ago, they fired 700 missiles at
Yeah,
Israel on two occasions.
I think one came close to hitting its target, but it was mostly the debris.
Yeah. In one case, debris from one downed missile hurt and sent to the hospital a little Bedouin girl. I think she was 11 years old. And she's out of the hospital. She's fine. That was it. 700 missiles. Eh, we know what their missiles are worth. And frankly, my darling, we don't give a damn. But in doing this, in showing these uh, uh, bunkers, they have, these videos of the inside on the missiles and the almost hospital cleanliness of the place, and then they show you videos of a truck coming into the bunker. Well, thank you very much for lighting the target, you morons.
Well, also,
That's why
okay,
we have the B-2s over there.
currently the Islamic State of Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, rather, has zero air defenses. The Israelis destroyed all the air defenses which the Iranians had gotten from the Russians, and the Russians are no longer in a position to provide anybody with air defenses because they don't even have enough to defend themselves. As far as anybody knows, all of Russia's air defenses are now devoted to protecting Putin's dachas. And so
And
this,
and Trump is beginning to show the limits of his patience.
yeah, I mean, Putin is see, this is what's so fascinating about the world. Trump is almost 80 years old, and the difference between Trump today and Trump of 2017 to 2020 is night and day. Trump sat down to a seminar on cryptocurrency given by his 18-year-old son, and he listened and learned. Trump listened and learned from multiple people. Trump is changing. Putin has not changed in 20 years. The Islamic State, the Islamic Republic of Iran, has not changed since 1979. Leftists are now going in reverse. They're going back to what, pre-1960s. They're going back to the 19th century. They're going back to like the period where they were like throwing bombs at the NYPD. They're going back to Sacco and Vanzetti days. I mean, it's incredible. So Trump is evolving. He's changing. Trump, if you throw a ball at Trump, he can change and dodge in real time. He will try something, and if it doesn't work, he will change it like that. Leftists can't do that. Putin can't do that. The Iranians can't do that. they are ossified. And anybody who's ossified is going to lose. When you find out your opponent is ossified, all you have to do is do something different and they're screwed.
Yeah. Well, he's doing it with tariffs.
Well, exactly.
Every day, I'm cracking up even more. Every day I see another idiot come up with some stupid 1980s argument. I love it because in one case somebody came up to me with a Ronald Reagan tape where he condemns tariffs because they impoverish people and all that jazz. And I replied with the Los Angeles Times in 1987 when Trump imposed 100% tariffs on Japan. And you know what? It worked. What Reagan did with Japan is no different than what Trump is doing to the world, essentially.
Trump has said that he's now heard from every single country upon which he imposed tariffs.
Oh, yeah. And I can tell you, without fear of error, Argentina, Italy, Israel, Vietnam, um, Hungary, they're all ready to sign. Oh, now I have to add the UK. Starmer said as much. Even the socialist curmudgeon in England, uh, they're going to sign free trade agreements with the US with zero tariffs. Now, Vietnam was charging 68% on average.
Yeah. So from 68% to zero.
To zero. And, all we did was threaten 20% or some shit, or 30. When I say threaten, it's because they just went into effect by in 10 days from now, we're going to have an agreement and they're gone. The people who don't understand this are the leftists who cannot give up their love of tariffs.
Well, people are talking about the punitive tariffs of, when was it? Was it 1930s or prior to that?
We never had them. In 1930, they came into effect in 1931. We had a shit ton of tariffs. But the purpose was not to punish, it was to create a barrier. At the time, the US had a trade surplus with the entire world. But the fascists, and I don't say that lightly, Democrats, Roosevelt at the head of it, essentially wanted a fortress America, wanted protectionism. They wanted to build a wall around American companies. That never worked. It didn't work in 1930.
No.
But now who's building the wall? You lived in Japan, right?
Uh-huh.
How many machines from Caterpillar did you see operating in road building in Japan? Not fucking one, right?
Exactly.
But you cannot hit the street here without seeing Komatsu.
Well, in Japan, if somebody owned an American car, it was like a news story.
Of course, and with 150% tariff on the American car, who the fuck is going to own it?
Well, billionaires. A billionaire would drive down the street in like a Lincoln town car, and it was a news story.
And it was a news story, and it. But again, the same thing. Japan can put tariffs on Caterpillar, but if we put tariffs on Komatsu, it's bad.
Well, that's the thing that
no.
The argument by leftists against tariffs is made in bad faith.
Yes.
Trump, these are reciprocal tariffs. These are reciprocal tariffs. We're putting tariffs on people as a result of them putting tariffs on us. And
it is not reading the tea leaves, but the stated purpose of Trump's policy to bring them down to zero. We're going to charge them reciprocal tariffs, but we're more than willing to have no tariffs at all.
Exactly. And it's going to happen, and it's going to happen much sooner than is being
Oh,
predicted.
it's already on the way,
Yeah.
literally.
And okay, leftists. Okay, remember when Obama was president? How could you forget? Obama went around and he proved his superiority by bowing down to the floor. Um, and it was like, is this like leading from the rear? What are you doing? You're an idiot. Everybody's laughing at you. Everybody is in love with you because you're their slave boy. You're their water boy. And here you are with you're all puffed up. You're the smartest man in the room, and behind your back, everybody's mocking you. Do you remember the time when there was a British prime minister? I can't remember his name. He was essentially almost legally blind. Brown, was that his name? He was PM during the Obama years. He was Scottish.
I can't remember.
I can't either. But they were at some economic summit, and he led Obama into a broom closet. And the two of them walked into the broom closet, and then they came out with much dignity and their heads held high. And it was emblematic of the entire Obama presidency.
Yeah.
Obama gets led into a broom closet and comes out with his head held high, his chin up,
and pretending nothing happened.
Exactly.
Yeah, no. What a freaking moron!
Yeah.
Ultimately, by the way, Ayo commented in the chat a little while ago when we were talking about Snow White that even the BBC made a critique of the new Snow White as communist propaganda. The BBC!
Yeah.
Holy shit!
No, I mean, there wasn't one thing that Disney did right about that movie. The actress Rachel Ziegler, something's up with Rachel. Rachel, her first film was the Steven Spielberg bomb, West Side Story. Rachel had no acting experience, no singing experience, nothing. She sent a cold tape, and it was one of 30,000 tapes that Spielberg got. He personally chose her. She was in West Side Story. She was 16 at the time. And then she was in a Hunger Games movie. I don't know how that did. And then she was in Snow White. And the whole time she's been...
I have to say, she is from the Kamala Harris School of Acting, and she has added knee pads.
Well, and she's also an insufferable diva. And so she's destroyed her career at the age of 23. She's done. Nobody's going to hire her. If you look at her IMBD page, she has no upcoming projects. She's done, and she did it to herself. The producer of Snow White flew out to New York to tell her, you have to stop running your mouth because you're going to tank our movie.
Killing us.
She said, you don't tell me what to do. I can do what I want. I'm a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so she did. And everybody
I hope she learns to code.
Well, everybody said, no way I'm giving her my money. As she said herself, I don't need your money. And it's like, okay, you don't, fine by me. I won't give it to you then. No.
Yeah, she's got to go back to the hole whence she came. But anyway, going back to our conversation, it was just funny the comment on the BBC thinking this is too communist.
Yeah.
My God, you know they really overdid it. Going back to tariffs and all that jazz. Everybody talks about tariffs as if it was a single thing. Not all tariffs are created equal. Punitive tariffs, protective tariffs, reciprocal tariffs. They're all different and they have different effect on economies. These that Trump is using, I don't think will have hardly any effect on our economy,
No,
except down the road to increase our exports dramatically. There is a reason why if Ursula von der Leyen, and let me see, yeah, I actually have it here. Let me see if I can. I call her Postula van der Merden. Um, yeah, just 1 second. This one is in English, so we should have no problem. Listen to this shit. She's supposed to be a conservative, but as we always discuss, a conservative in Spain is the closest thing there is to a communist in the Soviet Union.
Know that many of you feel let down by our oldest ally. Yes, we must brace for the impact that this will inevitably have. Europe has everything it needs to make it through the storm. We are in this together. If you take on one of us, you take on all of us. So we should stand together and stand up for each other. Our unity is our
Any more bromides and I'll puke.
strength. Europe has the largest single market in the world, 450 million consumers. That is our safe harbor in tumultuous times. And Europe will
Apparently, 450 million is larger than India or China.
stand at the side of those directly impacted. We have already announced new measures to support the steel and cars sectors. Now, we will also convene strategic dialogues with the steel, the automotive, and the pharmaceutical sectors, and others will follow. Europe stands together for our business, for our citizens, and for all Europeans. I know that many of you feel let down
it's
by our
repeating.
Yep. Now, let me see if I get this right. Europe, of course, is going to stand together. That's why 4 countries in Europe have already told the US, hey, wait a fucking second. We're going for the zero tariffs. Where do I sign? Because they're all standing together. Because we're all a family and the largest market in the world. It's all bullshit. Everything that comes out of this woman's mouth is bullshit. But my favorite is how they're going to protect their auto industry. Europe has been charging tariffs on US manufactured cars at 4 times the rate of US tariffs. US tariffs stood at 2.5%, Europe at 10%. Why? I don't know. And that doesn't even count the subsidies that Europe pays every year to their car manufacturers. And don't let me don't let me get started with Airbus. That wouldn't even exist if it weren't for subsidies, dumping, and tariffs. So, what is she talking about?
Like all leftists, she is simply saying the right thing and then going home and having a drink and not even giving it another moment's thought. Europeans don't stand together. They don't even stand together in their own goddamn countries.
You're kidding me.
They hate their own countrymen. They hate Europeans more than they hate Americans. I mean, it's none of it is real. Like everything she just said is some childish fantasy about the strength of Europe against the United States,
Yeah,
and none of it's real.
yeah, but going a step further, my first notion of European protectionism came up when I was a teenager, covering for a news agency the Uruguay round of the World Trade Organization. It was called the Uruguay round But the meeting that I covered was in Buenos Aires at the Plaza Hotel. And the biggest problem at the Uruguay round of the World Trade Organization was Europe's refusal to eliminate trade barriers and tariffs to agricultural products from the US, and it affected Argentina, Brazil, and Uruguay, Australia, and the US in particular. Europe built a system of tariffs and non tariff obstacles that ostensibly to protect European farmers that literally banned entry to anybody's products to Europe. Argentine or US beef, wheat from the US or Brazil, nothing could make it into Europe. To this day, that's very much the case. Even though now they're destroying their farmers with stupid green legislation, so you wonder what the fuck these people expect because they're not importing from America and they don't want to produce it in their own soil. So I guess they're gonna go back to eating locusts like St. John the Baptist.
Well, they're going to eat canned goods. They're gonna bring back like the British wartime propaganda, where it's like they're gonna have like the main source of their food is going to be like the potato.
Moroccan shit.
Yeah, like dates. They're gonna be they're gonna all their restaurants are gonna be like serving dishes that are based around dates, canned dates.
Yeah, and Chris Johnson says condensed milk, not from here, and they're producing less and less. Io says Europe has been doing tariffs for decades. Heck, Germany in the 60s, because their population were buying, between quotes, too many American chickens. Now, one thing that anybody who's lived in many countries in Europe and South America and in the US can observe is that chicken is one of the cheapest proteins imaginable. In the US, you buy chicken for less than $2 per pound. Heck, a whole fucking bird that looks like a turkey in places like BJ's or Costco, already rotisseried, is $5. In Europe and South America, chicken is an expensive form of protein that sells from somewhere between $3 and $5 per pound. Think about that. Now, why wouldn't they import chickens from the US?
Well, why?
Like they said, they're buying too many chickens from the US. We're going to put a tariff on it.
Well,
In some cases, they do it to protect a small, expensive, inefficient local industry. In some cases, they do it to raise taxes. In some cases, they do it just to keep the US out of their markets.
I moved to the Netherlands in 1975, and I left. We went around from Netherlands to Norway to the UK. I left Norway in 1981. So I lived in Europe from 75 to 81. And with the exception of McDonald's, I ate no American food from 1975 and 1981. It simply was not, I mean, it was prohibitively expensive to eat.
And it wasn't American food because it was done with local food.
Say it again?
And it wasn't American food because it was done with local products.
Yeah. No.
McDonald's couldn't import. McDonald's developed a plan to plant potatoes in the countries where they operate in Europe and South America, so that they have the variety of potato they want. Because they couldn't import it from the US.
This is why McDonald's in the Netherlands, in Germany, in France, wherever, it tastes completely different from the American McDonald's.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about supermarket food. I didn't eat a single American product. I ate
Not ever.
Dutch cookies. I ate Norwegian. I ate Norwegian beef, which was sweet. It almost tasted as if it had been sugared.
Yeah, that's like horse meat.
Yeah, it could be. My father bought this 6 foot long chest freezer, and
Maybe you were eating sweets in Norway.
ah, my father bought this 6 foot long chest freezer, and then he bought half a steer and had it all chopped up and we put it in the chest freezer, and then ate beef for the next 6 months or whatever. But the ground beef, when I landed in Norway, I was all jet lagged, and it was in Norway in the summer the sun doesn't set. It sets for like half an hour or something. So it was like 8 o'clock at night, and the sun was up in the high in the sky. I was all disoriented. And my father cooked burgers made from Norwegian beef, and it tasted like he'd sugared it. And I thought, I'm not going to be able to eat beef here. I got used to it, but I didn't eat a single American product the whole time I lived in Europe, because it just wasn't available. It was there. You could go to an American product store, but you would pay $10 for a Snickers candy bar. It was like that. And so I ate nothing but the Dutch and the Norwegian versions of things, and it was fine. But you can get. We have so many stores in this country where you can buy Norwegian food, you can buy Dutch food, you can buy British candy, the Cadbury chocolate, and it essentially wasn't available in the Netherlands and Norway, except in very specialized stores. So they can whine about how we're picking on them, and now they have to stand together as one family, which they're not, and which they're not standing together. They've never stood together, and they never will stand together.
No, by the way, that's another thing that I was in a meeting at the beginning of the end of February about common values. It was after J.D. Vance's uh, saying to their vinegar faces that we don't like the lack of freedom in Europe, and that we thought we had common values, but obviously we don't. And that hit a nerve over there. And all of these members of the European Parliament were, our common values, and we have common values. And it was my time to ask questions. And I said, well, can any of you name 3 common values you have with the US? I'll make it easy on you. Can you make 3 common values you have with your neighbor? Because there are no common values between one European country and another. There's no common purpose. There is no common value. There is no common anything. It's an entelechy. And that is part of what you're saying now. Eh, We're standing together. No, you're not, and never will. And that is the problem that the European Union as a fascist superstructure has been facing. And their attempts to browbeat a corporative state on all of Europe is backfiring in a number of places because even though there aren't that many common values, there seems to be a common disinterest in being a serf.
Well, I can't remember when this happened, but I think it had to be the 1960s. The Germans approached the Americans and said they wanted to co-produce a super heavy tank. It was going to be called the MB-70, the Main Battle Tank 70. And it was going to be a German-American co-production. And this was one of the most hellish experiences that American industry had ever had, trying to make common cause with the Germans. The Germans insisted that absolutely everything be done in metrics, and they absolutely refused to do anything under the imperial system. So it took years from the beginning to produce two different sets of plans that would allow. What it came down to was that we were going to co-produce this tank, but the solution they came up with, the game changer, exactly, yeah. They built a couple of prototypes, but what happened was that the Germans were we worked it out so that the Germans would build their own in their factories, and we would build our own in our factories. So what was the point in saying it was a cooperative effort?
Right.
There was zero cooperation whatsoever. And so a couple of prototypes were made. This is one of them. And it was canceled. The project was canceled because the Germans were absolutely impossible to work with. Every time, the Americans always had to make the Americans always had to give in to the Germans, and every time they gave in, the Germans would come up with a new demand. And so it finally just, we just canceled it. It wasn't going to work. And the Europeans have had situations like that with each other. They announce that they're going to have this co-production of some fighter or some helicopter gunship or whatever. If you look at Europe today, the Italians have their own helicopter gunship. The British have some of their own, plus Americans. The Dutch have Americans. The Germans have their own, plus Americans. The French have their own. So it's and we had to change our ammunition to match the NATO standard rather than them changing their ammunition.
Yeah,
to match.
the 762.
Yeah. So,
but even NATO, the sidearm is the Beretta 9mm now. But no, Europeans hardly ever collaborate with each other. You have countries in Europe that are contributing 5% of their GDP to their defense, and countries that don't get to 1.2. But all expect to receive the same benefits from the defensive alliance, which is another point that Trump is making. Trump does not want to dissolve NATO. He's not attacking NATO. He's telling them, pay your fucking share, you deadbeats. It is the same argument he's using with the tariffs. He doesn't want a world barricaded in Fortress America, Fortress Europe. He wants open trade. He wants free trade, but free for all. I'm not going to open my market to you if you don't open your market to me.
Did you see
Very simple.
Did you see the clip of Nancy Pelosi basically making all of Trump's points in 1996?
Yeah, there is another one, by the way, with Chuck Schumer making the same points.
What struck me about the Pelosi clip is that the only thing that's changed was her hairstyle. Pelosi has looked 80 years old. For like
the mannerisms, the mannerisms are the same too.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's been 80 years old since she fucked Kennedy.
And she was, the first female Speaker of the House. And
that's supposed to have a particular meaning.
Yeah, I mean, look at her record. I don't know. I saw something about her ability to keep people in line by just glaring at them, and this is the problem that American men seem to have, is that too many of them are cowed by bitchy women, and the idea of Nancy Pelosi keeping people in line just by glaring at them is laughable.
Yeah.
She could glare at me all she wanted, but it wouldn't make me.
I would probably crack up laughing. Now the whole thing. I mean, we have elections for governor in Virginia this year. For all those wonderful people who want term limits, we cannot re-elect Youngkin because he's term limited. Damn. So now we're going to have a choice between Spanberger. I call her Spamberger. She's a former CIA analyst, and then she was a postal inspector. And then she worked for the Terror High. Remember the Terror High? The Saudi high school in Virginia that yielded 3 Al Qaeda officers.
Mm-hmm.
She spent, as she says in her own bio, her entire life dedicated to service, meaning she's been a parasite in the federal government since she could walk. Opposite her is Winsome Sears.
Mm.
Winsome Sears is a Jamaica-born American, a veteran of the Marine Corps, who did dedicate her life to service to this nation, but not sucking the teat of the state. And she would be the first black and the first woman governor of Virginia. Do you think you can expect any sympathy for her from the Democrats who are always talking about these things?
I can't even. I mean, I can already imagine the attacks that they're planning on her. They're going to call her an anti-Tom.
Yeah, a house Negro.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're so full of shit in every respect that I stopped caring for these things a long time ago. I do care about the fact that Winsome Sears is a Marine.
Mm-hmm.
And as lieutenant governor, she's been exceptionally able in her support for the governor. And I have no question she'll continue Youngkin's policies, which is what Virginia needs. And I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that this false imitation of Hillary Clinton, with a career of sucking the state's teeth and bringing commissions home, is going to be as bad for Virginia as she has been for everything else. There, I said it. Now, I'm not being paid by either campaign, and I don't give a shit. But I will vote. I will vote for Winsome Sears if I have to go on my knees to the polling station.
Well, I mean, the thing about Democrats, the bifurcation that's happening, California is going to remain a cult for the rest of your and my life. And
yes,
it's not going to change because, going back to my brother's friend, he would rather stay in California suffering physical abuse at the hands of monsters who are allegedly caregivers than go to Missouri and live under the loving care of his sister. That's just who he is. And there are voters here who will put up with it. Oh, the voters voted for an extra 0.5 cent in sales tax to give to the homeless, and now they're complaining because all their goods have gone up in price. And it's like, but you voted for this. You voted for this. You voted for this knowing that $26 billion for the homeless people had produced absolutely nothing. The homeless issue, there are more homeless now than at any other time. The LA city homeless department has been dissolved by the county because all they did was take money and it disappeared and they did nothing. So now the county has taken over the homeless issue. The county's record for homelessness is no better. There were something like 12 different government homeless organizations competing for funds here in Los Angeles County. And, and the voter said, well, if we just give a little bit more, then we'll solve the problem. And then
they only cannot account for 25 billion. What would another 20 billion do?
Yeah. No, and see, this is what gets me about California voters. They vote for stuff and then they complain about it. It's like, just keep your mouths shut. You were told before this happened, before Gavin Newsom became governor, he was the mayor of San Francisco.
Yep.
His record was
married to the Guilfoyle guy.
Right. And Californians knew his record. They were told, don't vote for him because he's going to rape you. And they said, and that's what he said. He said, vote for me and I will rape you. And they said, okay, sounds good. And then they complained. And then when there was a chance,
you know why I think they did that? Wasn't he the one who performed the same-sex marriage in defiance of the law back in the 90s as mayor of San Francisco?
It could be. The only thing I knew about him other than his record was that he had to do, while he was mayor, he had to go to rehab to kick a cocaine habit. Yep. So it was like, oh, what a great mayor. But his campaign slogan was vote for me and I'll rape you. And, Californian voters said, okay, sounds good.
You have to give it to the man. He's been doing everything possible to live up to his slogans.
Yep. And okay, now Javier Becerra, who was Obama's wife.
Oh God! Okay, no, he was California's district attorney.
Correct.
And then, of course, Biden's Secretary of Health and Human Service.
Okay, so in other words, just a complete jack off and
complete jack off with not one thing you can mention to his name.
No, positive. He's going to run for governor. The Los Angeles district attorney, George Gascon, the guy who refuses to put anyone in prison for any reason whatsoever, he was doing that in San Francisco. San Franciscans told everybody down here, don't vote for this guy. He's going to wreck your city. And they voted for him. And then he
did.
I think the stupidest thing I ever saw, it was some rich enclave. I think it was Santa Monica. And there was security footage. And it was an alleyway full of identical blonde women jogging in the morning. It was like perfect Stepford wife blonde women.
Yes.
And one of them was pushing a baby carriage. So this 17-year-old kid decided he was going to go down the alley in an SUV and try and run down the women. And so he saw the woman with the carriage and he turned the car toward her. And at the very last second, she grabbed the carriage and lifted it over the car and was hit by the car, but the baby was saved. And then there was a big truck in the alley and it saw this happen. So it deliberately crashed into the SUV and they caught the kid. He was let go. No punishment, basically. And luckily some gangbanger killed him. So he's out of the gene pool. But the woman with the baby carriage had voted for Gascon. She said she had no idea that he was going to do these things, even though he said beforehand,
He said he was going to.
he said humans don't belong in cages. So she left California. She went to Nevada. So
Yep.
she put George Gascon in there, and then she fled because she didn't like what he did. And it's just like, lady, I'm sorry. For one thing, you look exactly like every single woman in that alley. You're all jogging at the same time. You're all wearing the same clothes. You have the same blonde hair. And then after voting for this guy who said, I am not going to put anyone in prison for any reason whatsoever, now you're complaining. You're complaining to the point that you flee the state and you leave the rest of us here to deal with it. But, those are Californians for you. In Nevada, how long is Nevada going to be able to hold off the California voters?
It's already on the razor's edge.
Yep.
It's already on the razor's edge.
Yeah.
It's almost entirely dependent on Reno now because everybody goes to Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
But it is what it is. It's and the people of Nevada who are allowing these California newcomers to fuck them up like they did Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Because Colorado used to be a magnificent place until the Californians began taking it over.
Mm-hmm.
Because they started already in the 90s paying California taxes and going first the rich ones to Aspen and Colorado Springs, and now it's like the entire state is turned into a democratic cesspool, and it's mostly uprooted Californians. Maybe we should build a wall around California. What do you think?
Well, see, Californians pride themselves on their abrasiveness and their pig-headed stupidity, their refusal to face reality. So when they look around and they see that everything they voted for has ruined their lives, they go somewhere new and then they vote the same way because I'm a pig-headed idiot. I can't be expected to change. My caregivers are beating me black and blue, but I have to stay here because I'm a Californian. It's like every other cult. All cults are abusive. There's no such thing as a benign cult. And okay, that Amy Carlson, the godmother who ate the colloidal silver and dyed a lead color. She's like filming herself from her bed, screaming profanity at her little followers, and they're just taking it. After she croaked, they worshipped her corpse, and now there's still like 7 or 8 of them that are still together, pining for the days of Amy Carlson shrieking drunkenly at them. I mean, who can explain? Who can explain?
I just had like a little eruption into my brain of Jonestown acolytes of Jim Jones running around the country looking for Kool-Aid.
Exactly. I mean, think about that. Think about. I saw a recent documentary about Jonestown. When you joined the People's Temple, you had to sign over all your property to Jim.
Yep.
And Jim was
it was a communist Christian community.
Right. When they landed in Guyana, they discovered that the soil made it impossible to grow American crops. So they had to eat plantains. They had to eat moldy rice. And Jim was eating steak and potatoes and luxury food had been flown in on private planes for him.
I was going to say flown in because otherwise, there is a reason these people eat bread made with cassava.
Yeah.
You can't plant wheat in that place.
Exactly. And he did it openly. in Jonestown, there was never enough space. So they had bunk beds that it was 3 adults per bed.
Yep. And they
Shared.
had to take turns.
They had no doors. They had no showers. And then when he said it's time for you to all kill yourselves, most of them did. There were some that tried to fight, but most
Yep.
of them did.
Yep. Yep. They had to chase a few. That is true. But like you said, most of them just drank the Kool-Aid.
And on
And
top of it all,
they would today again.
on top of it all, Jim Jones was utterly repulsive on every level. He was physically repulsive.
Yeah.
What he said was repulsive. The way he said it was repulsive. There was nothing attractive about this man in the slightest. It's like,
But didn't we establish at the beginning of this conversation that Californians are suckers for punishment?
yeah. Well,
There you go.
have you heard of a preacher named Jimmy Swaggart?
Oh God, yes. I remember him crying too.
Right. Jimmy Swaggart never actually had a church. He had a TV network.
Yes.
So he was able to make about 200 million a year by simply broadcasting. And
Yep.
he built these giant mansions. He bought fleets of cars for his kids and his wife. And then, of course, he was caught with a prostitute.
With the pants down. Like
And
the Bakers.
he belonged to a network of churches, and they suspended him for 3 months. And he could only last 1 month without being on TV. So he came back. So they defrocked him. He lost everything. He lost his donations. He lost everything. So he went into real estate, but he still used that church loophole. So he was able to make real estate deals without paying a penny of tax on them. That bastard is 90 years old and he's still alive and he's still on TV. He's bald. He looks like he's melting, and he sits in a chair now. He doesn't have the energy to walk around, but
No.
his son has taken over. And I saw a video of him excoriating the Black Pentecostal community for voting for Kamala Harris. He was saying that they're all going to go to hell. This is the son who's now the fire and brimstone preacher who stands. He looks just like
don't tell me this son of a bitch pretends to be a Republican.
If he's saying that supporters of Kamala Harris are going to hell, then I would assume that. But Jimmy has the face he deserves. He looks like a fat melting demon. And why was this guy? I saw an interview with a woman who worked for the 85% of the church staff was assigned the task of sending out donation requests. And people were sending in jewelry. They were sending in fur coats. They were donating their property, and see, Jimmy belongs to a sect that says sometimes his Jimmy belonged to a sect that says that physical prosperity shows your religiosity, your piety. So the more pious you are, the richer you are. So that made Jimmy be able to openly ask his followers, make me rich, make me richer and richer and richer, and that's what God wants. And they would say,
Right.
"Oh my God, we got to make Jimmy even richer."
How about the son of a bitch? He's still out there. That tells his followers to send them checks. Every check is a seed they plant in the Garden of Eden, and it will grow into blessings for you. And the fucking morons send them checks.
Well, this is the thing that again, there's nothing There's nothing about Jimmy Swaggart that would make you want to have anything to do with him. He's repellent on every possible level, and he always was. And yet he was making $200 million a year in 1980 dollars.
And
Yeah.
by the way, Father Chris is suggesting this is a branch of Puritan theology. Father
Yes.
Chris, I'm sorry. I bow to your knowledge of Russian Orthodoxy, but obviously you don't know the Puritans that well.
Well,
Eh,
it's a
these,
deformation.
these people would be put naked on the street in winter in Massachusetts as they were being thrown out of their town.
Right, but it's a deformation of Puritan. It's technically a descendant of Puritanism. It is. He's right, but
No, it's a parallel development, like Quakers or Baptists.
it has nothing to do with Puritanism as defined. But they get around.
Both come from the same source.
Well, what they say is that the richer you are, the more pure you are.
Well, Puritans would tell you that showing riches was a sin and would kick you out of town for doing so.
Of course,
there was nothing holy about being rich.
Right. These people are not real Puritans, although they claim the heritage of Puritanism. It's madness. And why would you give money to someone who says the richer I am, the holier I become?
Yeah. And by the way, that's definitely not something that you'll find in Puritan churches.
No,
never did. Even not back then, not now. The opposite is truth.
Exactly.
The display of richness was an unpardonable sin. And you know what was even worse?
Many things, I'm sure.
To display riches above your station. If you were fairly poor and spent everything you had buying, I don't know, a gold chain, and went about town with a silk scarf or a gold chain, that was considered a transgression without redress. It would lead to your expulsion from the church. So it's an interesting thing. But these people, they're so fucking sick. And as long as there are morons, you know, if you want to find a church that lionized riches and promoted riches, that would be Catholicism with simony and with the selling of indulgences and the utterly obscene displays of richness by bishops and cardinals, which led to the Reformation. What the fuck, you know? And still today is for many a problem. You're going to find that there. The other one that I love is the one that sells you holy water.
Well, okay.
And by the way, anybody who actually sends money to this idiot, you know, a donation in any amount, and I'll send you a packet of holy water, and that'll bring riches to you. Hey, you send me the check, and I'll send you the same amount of holy water, but it will also be made with Pellegrino, so you at least can drink it.
Well, I mean,
more than you can do with his.
Okay, my neighbor is a form of fundamentalist Christian who doesn't remain in any particular church for any particular. She goes from church to church to church to church, and it's a kind of Baptist. It's a kind of Baptist religion that, I mean, the only entertainment she allows herself is Baptist entertainment. She watches Baptist game shows. She watches Baptist movies. And it's, as far as I can tell, it's not done anything for her in terms of her ability to sleep. She has insomnia. She's not a happy person. And I just, okay, you know the guy Dennis Prager. Dennis Prager once said that a religion should be a chore. It should be hard. Religion should be hard. And I just thought, no. I mean, this is why I stopped going to the Catholic Church, was because I never, even as a small child, like I would start dreading Sunday by around Wednesday night. I would be like starting to worry about Sunday.
When you were beginning to forget last Sunday, you started worrying about the next.
When the priest released us, I would always feel, as far as back as I can remember, this wash of relief, and it wasn't for me. And nobody seemed happy around me. It was a chore. Nobody enjoyed going to mass, and I just didn't like it. And okay, Dennis Prager fell and broke his neck,
broke his back. Broke his back.
Okay, so everybody's all grim about it, and I don't know. I just,
I have to say something about Dennis. I disagree with Dennis Prager more often than I did agree, although sometimes I did agree.
Yeah.
For the most part, though, I disagree. But I never saw him as anything other than a man honestly pursuing his ideas.
Yeah, exactly.
And I have a lot of respect for him in that sense, even though I disagree more often than not. And obviously, the fact that he suffered an accident and is in this sad condition today, I think is a matter for lamentation. I would rather have him fighting the good fight, and I'm sorry he's hurt. But I also think that in some issues, he was way out of line. I just don't think he did it out of malice.
No, I listened to him in his heyday, I guess you could say. And
yes, some years back.
Yeah, 30 years ago. Los Angeles now has one major talk station, but it used to have three. And so there was a lot more choice. And so I would listen around. And what got me about Dennis was that he was obsessed with things like he would say things that made my hair stand on end out of mortification for him, where he was talking about, anal sex and how wrong it was. And I just thought, like,
don't you have something better to talk about?
Well, I just thought you're revealing something about yourself that you don't even know you're doing. And
yes,
what it all came down to was that he seemed to be lamenting the fact that when he was in college, everybody was having wild sex and he wasn't, because of his religion and many other things. And
look at it on the bright side. He didn't get AIDS.
Well, but see, you can't operate like that. You can't tell other people what they should do in their bedroom, and you shouldn't make these blanket statements about things. And I'm not saying that you need to go out and promote things. I'm saying you should abstain from making a fool out of yourself by...
All I can think is the lady doth protest too much, me think.
Well, he was saying things like, it was built for ejection, not injection. And it was just like,
Oh God.
oh, Dennis, this is bad. This is embarrassing. Stop it. And it was
An endoscopy, I guess it's out of the question.
well, it was obvious this was something that was eating at him. And I just can't imagine when I was in college. I went to college from 1981 to 1985 in Portland, Oregon. Okay. So it was this maelstrom of naked young men and young women on drugs just rolling around the campus.
Oh yeah.
But it didn't mean anything to me because I didn't lead my life like that. And it neither bothered me nor attracted me, nor it was just something that was going on over there. And I was studying. College was hard for me. I was studying. I was trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do in my future. And the fact that they were having these bacchanalian parties somewhere over there, it didn't mean anything to me because I knew, of course, I mean, everybody's young, everybody's taking drugs that make them super horny and they're going to do stuff, but it doesn't involve me. I'm not jealous and I'm also not obsessed with it. And I'm not, it's not me. It's them.
Let me put it in plain English. You didn't give a shit about it.
No.
That's their fucking life.
Well, exactly. And
yeah, that was my position too.
Yeah.
I could care less. It only bothered me when they ruined my fan. I mean, if I went to a party, a rooftop party at NYU, we had beautiful rooftop parties, and within the hour, everybody was doped up and drunk. I would leave, and I would feel like these assholes just ruined a good evening.
Well, I lived on the 5th floor of a dorm, and it was famous for all the good-looking boys who lived there. It was a male only. And so my roommate and he was a little punk rocker, and he was a brilliant guy. We are still in touch all these years later. And there was a girl who lived in a dorm next door, and she'd worked her way through everybody on the floor, and now it was Joe and my turn. We were the last two. So we were at lunch, and she came and sat down on the table at the table. She was this drugged up blonde girl, very attractive, and she said, "The boys from F50," and we were just like, yeah. And she was waiting for us to like proposition her because everybody else had their helping.
Why wouldn't you?
Joe was a little guy, but he had a super deep voice. And do you remember Lurch from the Addams Family? Sometimes he would go,
you run.
Or he would just make this rumbling noise. That's what we were eating. And Joe just looked at his plate and made this weird rumbling noise. And I just kind of sat there going, And eventually she got up and left and then when she was gone, we had a huge laugh because it was like, no can do, lady. Sorry. We're not getting on the train. It's not. And she didn't understand, I mean, I'm here for you. And it's like, but I don't know. I can't touch you.
I think one of my predecessors is already inside.
Well, this is the thing that what would be the point? What would be the point? Like when I get together with all the other guys and go, it just didn't. It wasn't who I was. It wasn't what I was into, and I just felt bad for her because I mean, she was off her rocker on drugs, and
right.
This was in the semester. She'd aged like 15 years, just from the lifestyle, but all all the other guys were like, yeah, I do it. Yeah, why not? And it's fine. I'm not going to preach to you. You do what you do. You do you.
You do you. There's always penicillin.
Well, I mean, okay. I mean, bifurcation. We had defeated all these horrendous sexually transmitted diseases, and now they've come back because leftists are preaching. They're saying that the right wing is trying to keep you down. So go out there and so people are getting like drug resistant gonorrhea. I mean, holy God.
Yeah, wonderful. They're gonna have a crying baby the rest of their shortened lives.
Yeah.
I really don't give a shit about any of them. I was here in Miami. Yes, I don't know where the fuck I was driving through, and there is this humongous billboard. Syphilis is curable.
Syphilis is what?
Syphilis is curable.
Yeah, it is.
Number one, no shit, Sherlock. Number two, if people are spending money on fucking billboards that size, it's because there's a problem now. What the fuck is this? The port
Well, exactly.
of Plymouth in 1720?
That's what it used to be. And now they're putting up billboards in the middle of the city.
And now they're putting up billboards. So we know there's syphilis is back, gonorrhea is back, there's antibiotic resistant gonorrhea, and of course we have the mumps are back, and TB is back.
Yeah, TB is back.
And now we have there have been several cases of polio in Western New York.
Well,
you gotta be shitting me. On the other hand, there is the little son of a bitch in me that says, "Good, it's time we call the herd."
Well, we had a case of rabies here in Los Angeles. Rabies.
Yes. You gotta be kidding me.
Yeah. So we had a rabid newcomer came across the border. It was a woman. So a rabid woman came across the border.
You know that this is material for about an hour of comedy talking about the rabid Mexicans, right?
Well, I mean, again, we go back to this being the least humane state in the union, that all of this is supposed to be allowed to happen. Rabies is okay. It's more humane than deporting them with the evil ICE. I just saw that nitwit judge ordered that the MS-13 illegal be returned from El Salvador.
Yeah, and the administration one idea that says, well, you better call somebody in El Salvador because I'm not aware that we have any jurisdiction over there.
Well, that's the thing. They try and get Bukele to honor an American.
Try Bukele on the phone and see if you can do something about it. By the way, before we leave this generation of syphilitic morons, let me show you. This is a bus from Atlanta to DC, bringing the creme de la creme of the leftard shitheads to protest in Washington. I have to say that if we don't have a bigger problem with gonorrhea and syphilis, it's because these people are all unfuckable. They once imagined how it's done, and they've never been able to get close since. And if you don't believe me, just take a look at the faces.
The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. Free, free Palestine. Palestine! Long live Palestine! From the river to the
Holy
sea,
God.
Palestine will be free.
Now, did you see those faces?
Well, what about the physiques?
Yeah. Well, look at this guy over here. I put him on the screen. It's a black guy with a kafiyeh.
Yeah, he's getting paid.
Yeah. What do you think would happen to the son of a bitch if he shows his face in Gaza?
Well, exactly. I mean, this sort of the people united will never be defeated. You've been defeated. You've been
No.
defeated on every front.
They were born defeated. But you know, it's and Sarah is putting in the chat. Oh, and Gonzalo says, "No, I'm not in South America anymore. Stop, please." Because I told you when we had the conversation, el pueblo unido jamás será vencido. Sarah is saying there, it's a South American thing. Now they literally translate, but they translated with fucking Google into the people united will never be defeated. What the fuck is that?
Well,
You can't even chant properly.
well, it's a stupid chant. You're going to Washington D.C. isn't going to stop the Israelis from bombing the crap out of Hamas.
No. And you, if you go over there.
Well, they're not going to go over there. I mean, how many of those people can even find Gaza on a map?
None. In that bus, not one. Not fucking one. I'll wager anything.
There were a couple of guys on that bus who looked like they were quadriplegics, but I know they're not because they were moving their arms. They literally had zero muscle tone. So it's just like these
Well,
are.
that is precisely what I meant by these people will never have syphilis.
It's just the press is really trying to drive home this notion. James Carville said that the Trump administration would collapse within a month, and
he's a fucking imbecile who never got anything right, even after the fact.
no, exactly, and
remember when he credited himself with Bill Clinton's election because we won because I was right. It's the economy, stupid. Remember that?
yeah, of course.
Except Clinton got 40% of the vote, asshole. 60% of Americans voted for somebody else.
Yeah.
You didn't win that election. Ross Perot won it for you.
Well, see,
and they never understood that.
When Trump first announced his running in 2015, I thought he was going to be like Ross Perot, except that he would drop out. He wanted his attention drawn to certain issues, and I thought, fine, whatever. And it was only until after the first debate, it was the second primary debate, when he started mowing his opponents down, just mercilessly. That's when I really got interested, and that's when I researched everything I could about him, and that's when I knew he was serious and that he was going to win. And
I thought that it was a repeat of 2012.
Yeah, exactly.
When he came in, dropped a couple of issues, then left the campaign and endorsed Romney.
Exactly. And the thing about Perot is that Perot was one of those guys who got pissed off if you asked him to basically explain himself. Then you became his enemy.
I'll be right back. You keep going for a while.
Right. And then his running mate, Admiral so-and-so, Perot's running mate, was just, he was dead in the water. He was, you know, in the vice presidential debate, it was just awful. It was impossible to watch. He like sank himself without a trace. But Perot was a spoiler Perot was a man with a gigantic ego, and it was a negative ego in that he was willing to sink the country just to show how important he was. And luckily, the Republicans had a gigantic majority in the House to keep Clinton in reign. Clinton tried to govern from the far left, and it didn't work, so he went to the middle. And then, of course, the Republicans blew it by impeaching Clinton. The Democrats didn't blow it by impeaching Trump twice because they had their allies in the press cover for them. But if you think about it, when was the last time you heard anybody talk about Trump being a twice impeached president? Nobody talks about it because they knew it was a sham. Both times it was a sham. And, we now have Democrats calling for violence, which is what they impeached Trump for doing. And, it's reached this point where I'm not outraged by it. I just sort of brush it all aside. What Trump is doing right now is he's getting all the hard stuff out of the way first, the tariffs and possible military action against Iran, so that by the time the midterms roll around, nobody will care. But the Republicans have an endless list of extremely high-powered individuals. I think that the candidate for 28 is going to be J.D. Vance. I think Trump chose J.D. Vance as his successor. And Trump is absolutely great at defending himself, but J.D. Vance is on a different level. I've never seen anybody like J.D. Vance.
I'm still warming up to him, but I've never seen anybody like him in the vice president's chair.
Well, I've never seen anybody like him be able to defend himself and to shred his opponents with such ease. He
Yes.
does it. There are certain people who can speak without hardly having to pause to find the word. It just comes naturally, and Vance is one of those people.
No, we can invite him to the show anytime. He'll fit right in.
Well, Vance is a completely different. He has a completely different personality type than Trump. But this is a non sequitur. Did you hear what a lip reader claims happened on Trump's inauguration day with Barron Trump? Did you hear about this?
What? When he murmured something to Biden or something else?
Right.
Yeah.
According to a lip reader, Barron was standing next to his mother, and he told him he was going to go talk to Biden, and Melania said, try to be nice to him. And Barron walked over to Biden and leaned down and said, it's on now.
I've seen it. I've seen it with the slow-mo. I don't know if that's what they say, but it does fit the movement. It does fit the movement.
Exactly. What I get from Barron is that he is rock hard, and when necessary, he can be as cold as the middle of January in Antarctica, and but not cold in a bad way. Cold in a way of having no problem doing what's required,
of controlling the emotions. The guy, if his father doesn't give a shit, Byron doesn't give the shadow of a shit. This guy is beyond good and evil. He could care less about what you think.
Exactly. And by all accounts, he's going to enter politics.
He'll do great in politics.
Okay,
They'll make him king.
He's 18 years old, so that means I have to live another 18 years. Yeah, okay, I'll be 80-ish. I think I could make it.
Okay, we can make it.
I want
We can celebrate his inauguration and then croak.
to. Well, I want to see him as president. I want to see that for multiple reasons. But it's
Yeah.
yeah. I have like shocking longevity on both sides of my family. My father's side of the family, everybody lives to be there in their mid to late 90s, and in my mother's side of the family, it's mid to late 80s. So,
You know who I don't want to see as president here ever?
uh, there's a whole list. Who the hell's that?
That is Claudia Sheinbaum.
Oh, our leader to the south of us.
Yes, our fearless leader. When you think that this woman is at the end of a line that once had the likes of Benito Juarez, Madero, or even on a second round Pancho Villa or something, it's like if we worry about how things have depreciated in the U.S., poor Mexico, man. Now, listen to this. It's in Spanish. You don't need translation, but I'm gonna. It's very short. I'm gonna translate for the rest of the folks.
Pero nuestro objetivo es que baje más el costo de la luz.
Our objective is to get a lower cost for electricity.
¿Cómo lo vamos a hacer?
How are we
Pues si
gonna?
se consume
How are we gonna do that?
menos electricidad, se va a pagar menos.
Well, if we consume less, we will pay less.
Pero nuestro objetivo es que
Yeah,
Did you hear that?
yeah.
This is. I used to complain about Carter's Malays speech.
Mhm.
You know, lower your thermostat and all that jazz.
Yeah, wear a sweater.
But this is 10 times more retarded. I have another one. If you move to a cave without electricity, you will pay even less.
Well,
Although the Mexican government will find a way to tax you anyhow.
California is on its way to banning the internal combustion engine for cars,
Yes.
but 2 summers ago, they told everybody not to charge their electric cars because the grid couldn't take it.
Yeah. It's fun. You know, as far as I'm concerned, they're going to work. I don't think they're going to get to the banning of the internal combustion engine. But if they do, fine by me. Maybe that's what you need to get Californians to fucking wake up. By the way, people don't say this usually, but of all the places I lived in, there is none where most people have such a fucking love affair with cars as Californians do.
Mhm.
It's not just that they like the newest and the brightest. No. They're avid collectors. They work on their cars. Every teenager in California when I was there was working on their project car, and every adult too. And they show their cars with pride. And how are you going to get it away from them?
Well, also, okay, if you go out on the freeway, the main reason the freeways are crowded is because there's one person in every car. You don't see 4 people in a car. You don't see 5 people in a car. Everybody has their own car, and there's
It's
more and
freedom.
more and more people coming to California in terms of illegals,
Yep.
crazy people. But okay, Californians call their cars, my baby. That's my baby.
Yes.
It's like, no, it's a car. But
No, they have names for their
they
fucking
have names
cars.
to them. Yeah.
I go, Annie. I remember she says, don't rent a car. I'll give you one. So I go over there. She opens the garage, a fucking 1967 Mustang red convertible. I was 22. It's like having an orgasm on wheels. And I said, oh, what if anything happens to it? I'm going to rent a car. I can't drive this. And she says, no, it's my ex-husband. You can do whatever the fuck you want with it. I don't care. And there I was on Pacific Highway driving a 1967 Camaro, red convertible. It wasn't just the women, the men would stop me.
Sure. No, the only acceptable way you can approach a stranger in California is if they have a nice car and you want to talk to them about their car. And
Is it, yeah,
you
is
can
it
do
a 67?
yeah, you can do that to anybody.
And they'll talk to you and they'll tell you the story of the car's life.
Yeah, exactly. But California, since that summer where they said don't charge your cars, they've not done anything with the grid. Oh, and Dr. Oz just said that the federal government is going to get back all the money that all the federal money that California has used to help illegals.
They're already broke.
They're already broke, but
he's been push him over.
Yeah.
No, it's crazy. By the way, Sarah is saying she's in Mexico. I will also eat less to save more money.
Yeah, exactly.
That's something that Scheinbaum forgot. If you stop eating altogether, can you imagine how much money you're going to save?
Stop driving, stop eating, stop.
Yeah, and we're going to save the planet too.
Well, think about it. Use less electricity. Okay. Right now in my entire house, I have 2 lamps on, 3. And as soon as we quit the show, I'm going to turn this one off. And then when I go and I watch TV, I'm going to turn that one off. So I'll have 1 lamp on in the entire house.
You're in Mexico now.
There we go. I have a front porch light on and I have a back porch light on.
Yeah. What about the refrigerator?
So there isn't much more I can do to save electricity because
yes, you can disconnect the refrigerator and eat tree bark.
In terms of the fridge, let's see, it's got milk, it's got cheese.
See, a waste of electricity. Oh, listen, if you change to a diet of tree bark and dried locusts, you're going to be fine and you don't need a refrigerator.
Everybody stopped talking about eating bugs. Remember, that was a big deal.
Oh, they're still talking about it. In Europe, the European Union is now going to mandate bugs added to a number of processed foods, and they complain about America's processed food. At least mine don't have cockroaches.
Well, actually, there are certain foods that have bugs in them in this country. They're allowed. The FDA allows a certain percentage of the food. I can't remember which one it is, but they allow a certain number of weevils or something.
Yeah.
It's in something that's all ground up, so you're not going to find a full weevil.
You're never going to find it, and it's not added.
It's not added.
It's the critters that manage to get in.
See, I mean, think about how stupid the European Union is. None of the people mandating this crap are going to be eating bugs themselves. They're still going to be eating top sirloin. They're going to be eating endangered fish. They're
going to be eating senator steak.
Yeah.
In Germany, which is kind of like the senator steak is like a oh God, I'm having a brain fart. And it's one of my favorite dishes. Raw beef with raw eggs.
Oh yeah.
Bismarck. I think we call it Bismarck steak. They're going to be eating Bismarck steak made with filet mignon from a cow that had its udder massaged every day. It's not their problem. It's the little people that get fucked, as usual.
Well, the Labour government in the UK is at a
tartar, steak tartar. I'm sorry. Yes.
The Labour government in the UK is at a 17% approval rating.
Yes.
So
And Nigel Farage's Reform Party is now the largest one in the polls at almost 30%. This is they're gonna the labor is gonna get its ass kicked so far in. They're gonna be talking through their sphincter.
Well,
Literally.
they deserve it.
Oh, they deserve that and more. That and more. When you put together what's left of the Conservative Party, which is still polling at 20%, and Reform Party, uh, they're going to have a majority so large and so well past the absolute majority that unless the Conservatives continue to be pussies, they're going to dominate. If they continue to be pussies, more people are going to go to Reform until there's nobody left but Sunak.
This is the thing, that this terror of appearing to be too much like Trump. Trump, I saw something about Republicans who were upset with the tariffs, and they were, giving secret anonymous interviews to the press and talking about how horrified they were by Trump. And there's nothing wrong with the way Trump is doing things or the way he presents himself. It's nobody's gonna die. Nobody has to go to the hospital because Trump isn't a beta male. I don't know. It's the weirdest thing. Europeans spent thousands of years massacring each other, and then after World War II, they all took garden shears to their testicles, and they've been that way ever since.
But they have testicles?
Not anymore.
Yeah, I thought there was one left. Have you? I'm looking. I don't know if you've seen this, but in Madrid there was a big fire in an underground garage. There are plenty of underground garages in Madrid. In order to solve the parking problem, they build these humongous garages under every fucking city square. And they are fantastic. When you're going through the city, you don't have to worry about finding a place to park. Eh, well, in one of those, there happened to be an electric car parked. And you know what happens often with the batteries of electric cars?
Mm-hmm.
Now, that fire with those toxic fumes in an underground garage with almost zero ventilation had a singular effect. Two firemen died in the operation to put out this fire.
Don't they have oxygen masks?
They had whatever they needed. Some may not. Some may have been stupid enough to just go in. I don't know the details except that two died, and I saw a monumental funeral with all of the fire trucks in Madrid, sirens ablaze, uh, accompanying these two to the cemetery. Uh, what are they going to do with electric cars everywhere? They're not gonna, you're not going to be able to charge them because you cannot use the grid. You can't keep them in your garage because it's going to burn your house down. Uh, Tell me exactly how well thought out is this transition to electric in California?
Well, um, I'm writing a new book about post-war Germany in after World War One, and on November 9th, 1918, the German Navy went communist, and they rebelled against the empire, and they started having strikes, and then the troops who were garrisoned in Berlin, they went communist, and so they took over Berlin, and they were all armed. And at that time, Germany only had constabularies, and most of the constables had been drafted to serve in the armed forces. So most of the constables were elderly men. And so the Germans created militarized police, and they also created these paramilitary forces called the Freikorps. So I just bought a postcard. This guy here, he's wearing the collar.
Hold on. Let me put it solo so that people can see.
Okay. This guy here, he's wearing the collar patches of the militarized police. He's got the collar badge of the paramilitary Freikorps, and he's got the hat of the army. So this guy is
Frankenstein.
He's serving in all three simultaneously. He's a first lieutenant serving in all three of those units simultaneously. That's what Germans did back in the day to fight communism. And today, it's like, okay, they're not
They're grabbing their ankles.
They're not overtly communist, but it's sort of the end. Their own government is outlawing industry and farms. And 100 years ago, you had guys like that who would join all three forces to fight against this, and they defeated the communists. They created the Weimar Republic, which was between the German Empire and the Nazism.
Yep.
The Weimar Republic existed from 1918 to 1933, and here they are today, where they're electing people who say, okay, now we have to destroy all our industry and we have to destroy our farming. And
yep. And we need to support the people who occupy apartments because rents are too high and the working men and women in this country cannot afford it. So we need to allow them to occupy somebody else's property and use it as their own.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't cost, I don't know why in many countries in Europe, people are taking it in the ass with this one. I know that if somebody gets into my house and tries to keep me out, first I'll go to the police. And if the police tell me, well, they're already in, there's nothing we can do, I'm going back in, armed to the teeth. And I guarantee you they're going to be on the ass in the garden or dead. Take your pick.
Well, I've never understood the whole squatter thing. All you have to do, if somebody's squatting in your property, you just hire somebody to go in there with baseball bats.
Yes.
You clear them out, and then you change the locks, and that's it. I mean, problem solved.
The problem in countries in Europe is that many countries have laws that give those people the benefit of the doubt. Therefore, you throw them out, and now you are going to court.
Oh,
shit. I got my title. They don't have a rental agreement. Bye.
Well,
I'll apply the castle doctrine on the fuckers.
Turning Point USA set up a tent that was manned by a podcaster and YouTube personality named Officer Tatum. And before he could even say a word, Antifa descended on the tent. They destroyed everything. They stole his sound system. They smashed the controls, and they pulled down the tent. And the cops stood by and did absolutely nothing. So Officer Tatum waded into the middle of it. He's a former cop and bashed a lot of heads, and they ran from him like the little girls they are, but they still destroyed the entire tent, and the cops did nothing. And that's what I don't understand. It's clear that what Antifa was doing was illegal. So why aren't you doing your duty, officers? Do you agree with Antifa? Is that what this is about? Or are you just simply afraid that somebody's going to equate you with Trump or Officer Tatum? What's the deal? Are we going to have the summer of love all over again when BLM and Antifa start burning down cities? I mean,
yes, we will, and I hope that this time Trump is sending the National Guard,
well,
because it's going to happen again, and we better send the National Guard.
okay, he can't send the National Guard without the governors approving it unless he
Unless he declares a national emergency.
Yeah, and I think that Trump would have no problem doing that. I think he would tell the governors, if you don't do it, I will.
Look at this. Speaking of this thing, this is in Bilbao today. If you don't pay your electrical bill and the electricity is cut in the house, you go to jail until you pay, because you have to maintain the electrical service to your involuntary tenants. Think about that for a second.
You said the landlord has to pay.
The landlord has to keep on paying all of the expenses, and God forbid somebody cut the water or the electricity to the house, because then you committed as landlord a criminal act. This is insane. You know what you were just saying that ended up in a battle on the streets. It was provoked by the police trying to get some people out of an occupied building.
Well, but in Spain, this is what they're voting for. So,
fuck him on steroids. I'm all for that. As long as they keep voting for this, let it happen more virulently and more often. In some places in the U.S., I'm seeing the same mentality at play, particularly in the Northeast.
Oh, sure. And something like that is going to happen in California. There's going to be like some attempt by the state to like start nationalizing, a part. They're gonna do something
unused property is what they love to.
They're going to be doing something even crazier than rent control.
Mm-hmm. Now, my advice to people is, until this is clear, do not invest in real estate. Get the fuck out of that.
Yeah.
When the law is such that a tenant can live in your place for 5-6 years without paying any rent, and then leave the place ready for the wrecking ball, and that is following legal process to get him out, you're screwed. You're so fucking screwed. You have no rights. Your property is not your property. And without property, there is no liberty.
Well, my brother's neighbors in Las Vegas are a retired elderly Jewish couple, and they had planned on supplementing their income. They had bought multiple apartment buildings, and they were going to supplement their income with rent. And they're actually having to use their retirement and their pension and their savings to repair the buildings, because the tenants destroy the buildings and don't pay their rents. And then they have to go through the lengthy and expensive legal process to get them out.
And then, of course, you don't get it.
Well,
never will. So there are better ways to earn retirement than this. And frankly, if people reacted to these laws in a rational way, there wouldn't be any more construction in this country for rental properties until this matter is clarified. Would you invest your money, your retirement money, building an apartment building that in the end, that in the best of cases will yield you a 5-6% net per year?
Like when I lived in Japan, I rented 3 different apartments over the 5 years I was there. And when you rent in Japan, you have to pay 6 months rent up front. The first, the last, a 2 month deposit, and a 2 month, well, it's basically hostage money to make
Yeah.
sure you don't trash the apartment. So having to pay 6 months up front, you're filtering out every, ridiculous immigrant who doesn't have a penny to his name. And having all that money being held by the landlord, you are basically bound to keeping the place as pristine as it was when you came in.
Because they're gonna grab your nuts otherwise.
Exactly. And it's universal in Japan. Every landlord charges 6 months rent in order to get in.
By the way, I've noticed that there is a lot of cheap property in Japan today.
There's a lot of what?
Inexpensive property. You can buy, granted, very small apartments, but hey, for 20 grand,
Mm-hmm.
30 grand, that's more than accommodating.
Well, there's a TV series about, or it's a cable series about the smallest, or maybe it's a YouTube series. Yeah, it's a YouTube series about the smallest apartments in the world. And this guy goes all over the world and he inspects these and he found these apartments. When I lived in Tokyo, the standard one-person apartment was called I think it was a 6 tatami mat. No, 3 tatami mat. I can't remember. It was a little sleeping area, a tiny kitchen area, and a bathroom with a shower and a toilet. And,
Yeah. What? It wasn't an American style toilet. I bet it was one of those squatting toilets.
it depended. I only rented the American style ones, but you got really used to living in a tiny, tiny, tiny space. You got used to it. The only problem with Japan was that the Japanese felt that since the Japanese in public are on their best behavior when they're out in public. So when they go home to their apartments, they let loose. And I remember I went through a period of horrible insomnia. And one night I was lying awake. And here's what I could hear. There was a guy practicing. It was 4 a.m. A guy was practicing his golf swing right under my window. There were cats screaming. There were 2 pianos playing. There were 2 couples having wild vocal sex. There was a guy constantly coughing and hawking and spitting. There were at least 2 couples having screaming fights. It was just utter cacophony. And it's because these people were in their houses, so they were allowed to do it whatever they wanted. And you just had to put up with it because being indoors in your own place was the only time that you could be yourself. And it was the neighbors were the worst. The last apartment I lived in, I shared with my girlfriend, and that was a great apartment. It was sort of separate from all the others, and it was wonderful. But in the 2 other apartments, I had horrible neighbors, just crashing and banging, and you couldn't say anything, you couldn't do anything. But it was Japan. Japan just came out of a 30-year recession, something like that.
Well, it's coming out. It hasn't come out yet, but yes,
All right, it's coming out.
essentially since about '89, ever since Ronald Reagan put the 100% tariffs on them, however short that was, and then in a few years, Clinton opened up China for the World Trade Organization, and a shit ton of companies that would otherwise have manufactured in Japan went straight to China. the Japanese economy stalled,
Mhm.
and they've had. I always said that the recession was so bad they lost the will to fuck. The fertility rate
Mhm.
plummeted. One, uh, unemployment remained unbudging, and only now, and of course, since by '94 they already had the interest rates at zero. They couldn't do shit. Uh, that's why so many people did money with the yen carry trade, getting loans at 1% in Japan and investing them in the West
They went
in government bonds.
they went through a short period of negative interest rates, so
Yes,
theoretically, you had to pay the banks to uh, put your money in. You had to pay the banks.
yes, it was very silly. Only now they're beginning to look normal again.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, their population shrunk.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at one point, they were exporting old people.
Mm-hmm.
They created cities for retirees in South America uh, that exist to this day and are essentially 100% Japanese cities in the middle of fucking nowhere. Uh, and they're beginning. When the troubles with China began about 8 years ago, the fortunes of Japan began to reverse.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of companies that were manufacturing in China are back to manufacturing in Japan now. It's one of the
Well,
biggest winners of this move.
the Japanese are a really strange socialism that is voluntarily imposed by the private sector. And
Yes,
for Americans who think socialism is the answer, Japan is a socialist country, but it's a socialism imposed by the private sector. And for example, if you are a complete incompetent, you will never get fired because you would lose face. So they do what's called giving you a window seat. Your
yes.
desk is put by the window, and you have no duties. So you come to work and you just play video games all day. Um,
Yep. And
or
you're expected to stay in the same company
yes.
from the moment you leave high school until you die.
In Japan, all students cram mercilessly for their university examinations, their entrance examinations. And the entrance examination is the entire college course, all 4 years, in one test. So if you get allowed into Tokyo University, you for the next 4 years you do nothing. You have no classes. You have nothing. You
You already passed the test.
you exactly. Those are the only 4 years in the life of a Japanese person in which they are not under pressure from somebody. After you graduate, you are expected to get a job and work until you die, or you're expected to marry a salary man and keep house for him until you die. So those 4 years are the only time in your life that you are free. Your whole life up until you took the college entrance examinations was preparing you. You began
That exam.
in the first grade for your college entrance examinations.
Yeah.
It's a brutal system. It's a brutal culture. And 99% of Japanese are pure conformists, and 1% are outliers who are the most individualist human beings on the face of the planet. They're individualist to the point where if you say, pass me the napkin, they'll say, why the fuck should I do that? Give me a good reason. And I met a Japanese guy who was a salary man. And after he'd spent 10 years at the company, he pulled off some feat and they gave him a 3-week vacation. So he went to the US and he bought a motorcycle and he rode from one end of the country to the other. And when he arrived on the East Coast, he called home and he told his parents, "I'm not coming back." He called his company and he said, "I quit. I'm not coming back." And
They must have sent people after him.
they sent people after him. He got a green card. He got a green card. He got to work in a motorcycle shop. And when I met him, he spoke perfect, unaccented American English, which he'd learned in his early 30s. And he said he didn't regret anything. He was the most patriotic American I've ever met.
Yeah.
He said coming back to Japan was a horror show.
Unthinkable.
Exactly. He was back to visit his family, and it was the first visit in, he said, 15 years or something. And they were still ashamed of him and everything. And he said, I don't even bow to Japanese people anymore. I pretend I don't speak Japanese. And it was amazing. I met multiple people like that.
It works both ways, because when Japanese people in Japan catch a wind of his 15 years in the US, he's a pariah.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
He's not to be a part of the circle anymore because he left the tribe.
I knew a Brazilian woman. She was a blonde, blue-eyed Brazilian woman, and her native language was Japanese. She was born in Japan of Brazilian parents, and they got divorced, and she was raised by a Japanese nanny. Her mother left her. Her mother abandoned her, and her father worked in the Brazilian embassy. So her native language was Japanese, and she stayed in Japan, and she was just a freak. I met her in she was working in a restaurant. She was serving tables in a restaurant, and I saw the blue eyes and blonde hair, and I spoke to her in English. She said in Japanese, "I'm sorry, I don't speak English." I said, "What language do you speak?"
You're gonna be shitting me.
She said Japanese. And she was not accepted in Brazil, and she was not accepted in Japan, but since the only language she spoke was Japanese, that's where she stayed. And
she should have gone to Liberdade.
Yeah, I mean, Japan, I found Japan, when I left, I've never had any urge to go back. The Japanese culture is very cruel to individuals. They have a saying that the nail that sticks its head up gets pounded down, and they live by that credo. And they drive people. They have an extremely high adolescent suicide rate. Everybody drinks. They get drunk, and when you're drunk, the culture allows you to say and do whatever you want, and you can't hold it against them. So they're the most obnoxious drunks on the face of the planet.
Yes,
it's a very harsh culture. It's as harsh as the samurai culture.
For the average Schmo, it's a life made of work, sleep, and transportation between the bedroom and work.
Exactly.
And every now and then, they may have 15 minutes of recreation with the wife. They eat shit. They drink shit. The quality of the food of the average Japanese is not that big a deal. I think that any Japanese restaurant in America has a much better quality and quantity of food than you'll see on the table of a working class Japanese family. They're very frugal, not out of intellectual conviction, but out of poverty.
Yeah. It's brutally expensive. I first went to Japan in the winter of 83, 84. I spent 6 months in Hokkaido, up in snow country, and during the Japanese New Year, my host father was a surgeon. And during the Japanese New Year, the boss of the company visits the homes of every employee, and he's given a drink. So he gets bombed off his ass. And by the time the head of the hospital came to my host family's house, he came in, he was wearing a kimono, he was drunk. He looked at me and he used the Japanese term, it's essentially the N word for white people. He said, "Who's that N word?" And my host mother got on the floor on her knees and hands, was bowing, and he like crashed into this chair and he's like, "Yeah, Happy New Year, where's my booze?" And so, you know, they gave him his drink and he looked up at me again, and then he looked around and he said, "You know, you haven't explained this N word, you know." And they said, "Oh, he's a guest." And I started to introduce myself, and he said, "Shut up." And he said, "Have I been here long enough?" And his little assistant was like, "Yes, yes, yes, yes." So then he got up and he said, "Yeah, Happy New Year," and like, "Fuck all of you." And then he, you know, left. And it was like, you guys put up with this? This was a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare.
It's real.
It's real. And the next day he would go to the hospital and he would be all dignified and everything, and no one would ever mention the fact that you were an absolute pig last night. You know, you were a racist, misogynist bastard. And
no, he was back to
exactly, yeah.
You know, tugulito sa kayapasan.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. And it was that. And okay, the Japanese don't have a concept of romantic love, so they still have a ton of arranged marriages. And
oh yes,
when a Japanese woman gets a crush on you, she doesn't know how to be, and so she becomes a stalker. And so every English language teacher, I taught conversational English, they all have stalkers. They all have young women who are stalkers,
right?
And they're frightening because they don't know what to do. They're out of control.
They shouldn't. You shouldn't fear them, but they are frightening.
They are frightening. Yeah, they come and they sit outside your apartment.
They don't have the ovarian fortitude to speak to you. They don't know what to say, but they stay close.
Exactly. And
I've seen that.
Japanese women, the Japanese culturally, and you know, just culturally view sex as nothing special. So I knew guys who had racked up, you know, several hundred, if not thousands, of conquests, and that was sort of what you did in Japan. I am the only Western heterosexual man who never slept with a Japanese woman while in Japan.
Well, that shows restraint. What was it? This
I wasn't attracted to them because it was too alien. The culture was alien, and the idea of, okay, if you've ever seen Japanese adult entertainment, the women always go, no, and the man takes them by force. That's how they are in real life.
By the way, I've never seen it. I'm learning now.
That's how they are in real life. They pretend.
Holy fuck.
They invite you over, and then if you try something, they go, no.
Okay, no, bye.
Well, this is the thing. It was too ridiculous, so I wasn't interested. I knew all of this from just what everyone had told me, and there were tons of guys who got off on that whole notion. And I dated 2 American women in my 5 years in Japan, and ended up staying with one of them for 5 years in total, 3 years in Japan and 2 years in the US. And I just wasn't attracted to the average Japanese woman. There were outliers, but they were all taken. And just going to a club and picking someone up and taking her home.
And if it is a westernized Japanese woman, she's probably not in Japan anymore.
Well, that's the thing. I met a lot of Japanese outliers, women. Most of them were women. The first thing they did was teach themselves absolutely fluent English. And the second thing they did was get the hell out of Japan. And because the Japanese, generally speaking, culturally speaking, didn't value the intellect of women. They didn't value women as autonomous individual beings. And so these outlier women who were very westernized, they couldn't wait to get out of Japan. And I did meet one in San Francisco who escaped from Japan, and she looked like she looked years younger. She was out from under the pressure of her family, her school, her culture in general, her society in general. She could be who she wanted in the United States. So
look at this beauty that we were talking about right now. This is a chart, an interactive chart of the evolution of Japan's population.
mm-hmm.
And you can see here, while South Korea's population has systematically increased
Mm-hmm.
since the 1960s, from about 25 million in 1960 to about 51 now. Look at Japan. In Japan, we kind of peak at
28.
128 million, give or take, maybe a little bit more, and then it drops again. And now, but we're back in 124, which is roughly where it was in 1990.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been a population decrease, but essentially no population movement since 1990 until today.
Mm-hmm.
That is a country in fucking crisis.
Yeah.
Because you know what happens with this.
Well,
You have, for every Japanese in retirement, rather, for every Japanese working, there are 5 in retirement that have to be kept.
well, the Japanese, like so many East Asian countries, culturally, the eldest son is one of the children is required to take care of the parents in their old age.
Yes.
When I was with the host family in Hokkaido, the father's mother and husband lived with them. I don't. The mother's father and mother were taken care of by a different sibling, but my host father took care of his parents, and they lived with them. And essentially, he just gave them a roof over their head,
Yep.
and they lived their own life. I only saw them, I think, 3 times in 6 months. I wasn't introduced to them when I first came.
That is, to be frank, the way it is in my family.
Mm-hmm.
The only people in my family who might end up in the home are those with medical problems that prevent them being housed in a regular home.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're in a fucking coma, well, so fucking bad. You're gonna be in a nursing home. But as long as people can don't need constant medical attention, they're home. That's the way it's always been in my family.
Yeah, my brother Tim and I, beginning in '93, we became our parents. The term we use is the factotum. We ran errands for them. We took them places. They were able to live in this house. They never needed 24-hour care by a nurse or whatever. They both died. They both got their cancer and died. They went from this house to the hospice. And so I took care of them from 93, helped them from 93 to 2013. And, I have 5 siblings, and Nobody else lifted a finger, but they're all leftists. Tim and I are the only conservatives, and we're the ones.
Why am I not fucking surprised?
Yeah.
That is, by the way, the Great Bifurcation. We passed our time, so we need to close
okay.
it somehow. And I always like to do two things before closing. One is a last appeal, since I didn't bother anybody this program. Um, Guys, if you're still watching us, it means, oh God, you like us. If you like us, why not buy us some coffee, for crying out loud? You can drop a fiver in the chat here in Odyssey, or at the Brother Lie, subscribe for $5, or you can go to quadverum.com/support us, or you can come to Odyssey and either support us through the channel or becoming members of this channel, which is even better. And if you can do that, very much appreciated. And thank you very much to everybody who did it today. I noticed there was a guy making contributions in YouTube, and it's very, very much appreciated. If you can, do it in Quadverum or here in Odyssey, because YouTube gets half of the money that you put in there. So, you do the math. But it's still very much appreciated anyway. And having said all that, we started with the Great Bifurcation. As these leftards realize that they have the rest of the slinger right now, and that Trump is going to advance over the next year further into restoring sanity to our international trade, to our uh, budget, to our balance of trade, to our civility. This week, among other things, he announced that the government is going to restore, replace, or rebuild all of the statuary that was destroyed in the summer of my discontent. Uh, and I think that's absolutely great, and I look forward to it. So Columbus is back. Um, Jefferson is back. Even at one point, they defaced a Mahatma Gandhi statue in D.C. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? In Los Angeles, they destroyed the Miguel de Cervantes statue, the guy who wrote Don Quixote. Imagine the inhumanity of it. So, but we are going to restore all of this. Sarah Mangas is saying he'll restore dignity. Absolutely. And as this is being done, these people are going to get into an ever higher temperature and close to boiling. And they will resort to violence because that's what they always do.
They're already doing it.
Yes, these fucking socialists, when they're in government, they steal. When they're not in government, they destroy. When they speak, they lie. When they remain silent, they're hiding something. There is never anything done in a positive manner. And I expect more violence, the same way that I expect our economy to boom this year. Yes?
Yes.
There's going to be some bad days in the market. Who gives a shit? If you have them, don't sell. If you sell, you're fucked. If you stay, you're going to be just fine, because as money flows from the stock market to the bond market, interest rates are dropping. And now the Treasury is back to 3 point something percent. It hasn't been there for a while. Low interest rates in treasuries means the Fed is not going to raise interest rates, and it may be forced to lower them to prevent a recession. $8 trillion in treasuries have to be refinanced this year. Do people have an idea what a 2% drop in interest rate means for that refi? That is the same as putting money into the treasury. To that too. So with that refi, we're going to have less expenses in interests. We're going to have more income in tariffs because some of them are here to stay. We're going to have enormous savings from Dodge. It's already happening with all the idiotic, supernumerary government employees that no longer have a position, with all of the thievery that went along that is no longer occurring. Certainly, nobody's going to be able to steal another dime through US ID. So all of this means that Trump is going to reduce our deficit, or at the very least, not increment it, reduce the uh, deficit in the balance of trade, reduce the deficit in the budget, increase the revenues without raising taxes, and it's going to be reverberating all over the system. Did you? I mentioned to you today. Brent oil closed Friday at 60 something, $64. It's the lowest it's been in nearly 5 years. And we know what happens with cheap energy. So while I do expect some choppy waters in the next 2 months, once news start coming of the countries that are signing for the 0% tariff deals, I think this economy is going to bounce like we haven't seen since 2017, after the Obama economy was dismantled. So looks like it's going to be fun, and that also means the Democrats are going to get more violent. I hope we give them all a wooden shampoo. Do you think we still have water cannons and paddy wagons?
We definitely have paddy wagons because I've seen them in videos. They're pretty amazing things. They have no windows, so
Yeah.
they just cram people in, and yeah.
Some can be driven to the nearest prison and the rest to the border, which we're doing, incidentally, in increasing numbers. That is going to lower rents
Mm-hmm.
when they don't have the government paying. And hotel room stays in New York are going to drop considerably once all of those rooms return to the market. Son of a bitch. So, anything you can add to this panorama? No?
Nope.
All right. In that case, my friend, hold on. Let me see. I'm checking the messages to see if there's anybody. Oh, somebody says here, I don't know why the hell, Martin. I know, Martin. I don't know what the hell you're doing on X instead of Odyssey, Martin. But he's saying a 2% reduction in interest rate for $8 trillion means $160 billion savings in interest per year for 10 years. That's 1.6 trillion. Not bad, huh? Not bad at all. So, with all of that said, do you have a last word for us, Thomas?
Dissever.
Hmm?
Dissever. DISSEVER. Dissever.
Oh, dissever. Dissever. Not dishevel, dissever. There you go. DISSEVER. Live long and prosper, my friend. And I'll see you next week. Good night, everybody, and thank you all.